A $5.3 million check sat in my grease-stained hands. I left work early, ready to surprise my wife and change our lives. But when I reached the front door, I didn't go in. I stood there and listened. Inside, she was calmly planning to drug me, declare me incompetent, and put me in a nursing home so she could sell the house. They thought I was just a confused old mechanic. They were wrong. I appreciate you spending your time here. Before we continue, comment below and tell me where you're watching from tonight. A quick note, some elements are fictionalized to enhance the story and its lessons. Any similarities to real individuals or places are unintentional, but the message I'm sharing is absolutely meaningful. My name is Caleb Thornton. I am 70 years old, forged by oil steel and the rhythm of engines. My hands are thick with calluses, the skin split and hardened from 50 years of turning wrenches. I am a black man in America who learned young that you lower your head, work twice as hard, and still expect half the credit. I believe that kind of discipline built a solid life. I believe sacrifice earned respect. I believe my family understood what I had given them. I was wrong. I stood outside First National Bank with the sun burning the back of my neck. Men in tailored suits brushed past me without a glance. Women with polished shoes and leather handbags avoided eye contact. They saw grease-stained coveralls and decided my value in a second. A laborer, a nobody. They had no idea the check trembling in my hands was worth $5.3 million. It was not luck, not charity, not a lottery miracle. It was justice delayed for 30 long years. 3 decades earlier, I was a young mechanic in a massive auto plant. I spotted a flaw in the transmission assembly, subtle but costly. I designed a correction, clean, efficient. It improved fuel economy and reduced wear. I presented it to my supervisors with pride. They smiled, they patted my shoulder, they took my drawings. A month later, I was fired over a trivial infraction. 6 months after that, my design appeared in every new model rolling off the line. When I demanded recognition, they dismissed me. Said a black mechanic with only a high school diploma could not possibly engineer something that refined. They stole my idea and called me uneducated for daring to claim it. They did not just steal my work, they stole my mind. I spent every spare dollar on attorneys, 30 years of depositions, filings, and hearings, 30 years of being called obsessed. My wife, Natasha, said I was pouring money into a hole that would never fill. Today, the court order was final. The corporation settled. I had won. I folded the check with care and tucked it into my shirt pocket close to my heart. I did not deposit it. Not yet. I wanted to see Natasha's face when I showed her. I wanted to see pride instead of disappointment. Natasha is 65, still beautiful, still sharp. But her hunger for more has always outpaced what I could provide. She envies neighbors with newer cars, friends who cruise the Mediterranean. I worked double shifts to buy her that house. It was never enough. I thought this check would finally silence the sighs. I stopped at a liquor store and bought the most expensive bottle of wine on the shelf, $500 for fermented grapes. I do not drink, but she does. Tonight, I would be the hero. I pulled into the driveway at 4 o'clock, an hour early, to surprise her. But a silver BMW blocked the garage, Cameron's car. My son-in-law, 35, smooth, polished, arrogant. He calls me Pops like I am slow. Since he married my daughter Kenya, she has looked at me differently through his eyes, like I am a relic in dirty boots. I parked on the street and walked to the door. The house was quiet, curtains drawn. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not warm laughter, not joyful. It was sharp, cruel, predatory. Cameron's voice rose above the rest. "I can't believe he bought that story," he said, choking on his own amusement. "The old fool actually thinks I respect his opinion on the market." Then I heard Kenya, my daughter. Her voice cut through the room, sharp as broken glass. "He's getting worse, Cameron. Yesterday he forgot where he put his glasses. It's embarrassing. Last week at the club, he tried to fix the waiter's table leg. I wanted to disappear. We need to do it soon, Mom." My heart slammed against my ribs. I waited. I waited for Natasha to correct her, to defend me, to say, "That's your father." Glasses clinked, liquid poured, expensive wine. Then Natasha spoke. "Don't worry," she said smoothly, the tone she used when she wanted something. "The old man trusts me completely. He's simple. He works. He comes home. He sleeps. He doesn't ask questions." The check in my pocket turned to ice against my chest. I pressed my ear closer to the wood. "So, when do we start?" Cameron asked. "I need this fast, Natasha. I've got people breathing down my neck. That house is sitting on a gold mine. The market's peaking. We can pull 800 grand in cash. 800,000. They were talking about my house, the one I paid for. The deck I built with my own hands. We have to be careful, Natasha replied. We can't sell it while he's competent. He'd never agree. He says he wants to die in that house. Cameron snorted. He might get his wish. No, Natasha said. Too messy. We need legal guardianship. We prove he's mentally unfit. I have a plan. I stopped breathing. The street behind me was still. A bird chirped in the oak tree I planted the day Kenya was born. You remember I used to be a nurse, Natasha continued. I know how the system works. I have a friend at the pharmacy. I got a supply of the blue pills. What blue pills? Kenya asked. They look exactly like his blood pressure medication, Natasha explained calmly. But they're not. Heavy sedatives mixed with hallucinogens, used for psychotic episodes. In a healthy person, confusion, memory loss, tremors, paranoia. My hand drifted to my chest. Every morning, I swallow a white pill beside my coffee. Every morning, she smiles and says, "Take your medicine, Caleb." Tonight I switched them, Natasha said. Her voice was no longer warm. It was ice. In a week, he'll forget words. In 2 weeks, he'll wet the bed. In a month, he'll be drooling. Then we call Dr. Hill. He owes me. He'll certify rapid onset dementia. We put him in the state facility. Cheap. I get power of attorney. We sell the house. Perfect, Cameron said. Glasses clinked. To the blue pill. Cheers, Kenya laughed. To freedom. Cheers, Natasha finished. To getting what we deserve. I stood frozen on the porch. The $500 bottle weighed like a brick in my hand. The label was dark red, almost the color of blood. My knees buckled. I gripped the railing. My wife, my daughter. They weren't ungrateful. They were planning to erase me, to poison my mind and steal my life. My hands trembled not from age, but from rage. Cold, steady, dangerous. I imagined kicking the door in, smashing the bottle across Cameron's skull. I'm strong. I swing sledgehammers for a living. Then I felt the check in my pocket. $5.3 million. If I stormed in, I would become exactly what they needed: an angry black man, a violent husband. They would call the police. They would point at me and say, "See, he's unstable." And they would win. No, that was not the way. I stared at the BMW in my driveway, then at the house I had painted myself just last summer. Fresh white trim, clean shutters, pride layered in every stroke. I stepped back from the door, slowly, careful not to let my boots grind the gravel. I moved like a thief leaving his own property. I slid into my truck and set the $500 bottle of wine on the passenger seat. For a long moment, I just sat there. That house had held my child's laughter. It had held Christmas mornings and long summers and quiet nights beside a woman I believed loved me. Now it was only wood and brick. The home was gone. I turned the key. The engine rumbled. I backed out and drove away. I did not return to the shop. Instead, I crossed town to a quiet park and sat on a weathered bench as the sun sank low. I pulled the check from my pocket and studied the zeros. They wanted $800,000. They were ready to dismantle my mind for it. They had no idea I carried over $5 million against my chest. They thought I was simple. Simple men do not survive 30 years of corporate warfare. I reached into my wallet and removed a business card worn soft at the edges. Ophelia Price, the attorney who had stood beside me in the court. Ruthless, precise. A woman who despised bullies. I dialed. "Ophelia," I said when she answered. "It's Caleb. I won." Her voice was calm. "I knew you would. Congratulations." "I'm not calling to celebrate," I said. "I need you again." "For what?" "For a divorce, a fraud case, and possibly attempted murder." I told her everything: the blue pills, the guardianship scheme, the facility on the edge of town. When I finished, silence stretched between us. "Do not go home tonight," she said at last. "Get a hotel, pay cash." "No," I replied. "Caleb, they're planning to poison you." "I know, but if I disappear, they'll hide the evidence. I need them confident. I need that pill in my hand." "Are you certain?" "I want them laughing," I said. "I want them believing I'm the tired old mechanic they think I am." I ended the call, opened the wine, and poured it onto the grass. The dark red soaked into the earth like spilled blood. I tossed the empty bottle and drove home. At 6 sharp, I walked through my front door the hour a mechanic returns from work. The house smelled of rosemary and roast beef, a scent I once loved. Tonight it smelled like bait. Natasha stood at the stove stirring stew. She turned and smiled. 40 years beside that smile, and I suddenly saw a stranger. "You're late, honey." she said, wiping her hands on her apron before kissing my cheek. Her lips were cool. I was worried. Truck gave me trouble, I answered evenly. Poor baby, you work too hard. Wash up, and don't forget your medicine. I said it out. I glanced toward the table. A glass of water waited. Beside it lay a single blue pill. So it had begun. Cameron lounged in my recliner, the one I bought with overtime pay in 1998. He didn't rise. He glanced at me over his phone and smirked. Hey, Pops, you look rough, falling apart at the seams. He stood, eventually strolling over to pat my shoulder. His touch was heavy and dismissive, the way a man pats a dog he plans to put down. Heat climbed my neck. My hand, strong enough to bend steel, could have snapped his wrist. But I let my shoulders sag. I lowered my gaze. Just a tired old man, I murmured, letting my voice quiver. Kenya entered wearing a new dress, expensive, likely charged to me. Hi, Daddy, she said, brushing a dry kiss against my cheek. Go wash up. Mom made your favorite. They were performing. I was the prop. At dinner, Natasha sat at the head of the table, my seat. I took a place along the side like a guest. The stew tasted fine, yet ash filled my mouth. Cameron talked about markets and closing deals. Lies. I knew he owed dangerous men money. Still he boasted. You wouldn't understand finance, Caleb. It's a young man's game. I chewed slowly. 5.3 million rested in my truck's glove compartment. I understood finance perfectly. The conversation thinned. Natasha cleared her throat and placed a small plastic cup beside my water. Inside sat the pill, bright electric blue. Oval, not white and round like the one I had taken for years. Take your medicine, honey, she cooed. A new supplement. It'll help your brain. I looked at the pill, then I looked at my wife, and I smiled. 30 years ago, Natasha worked as a nurse in a neurological ward. She used to come home and tell me stories about violent patients and the cocktails they used to quiet them down. She called it quiet time. She knew dosages, she knew drug interactions, she knew exactly how much to give to turn a man into a shadow of himself. This wasn't a supplement. It was a chemical lobotomy. I picked up the pill and let my hand tremble. I made sure they saw the shake, weak, fragile, afraid. I opened my mouth and placed the pill inside, but I did not swallow. I tucked it beneath my tongue, a trick I'd learned from an old mechanic who used to hide tobacco that way when the foreman walked by. The pill was bitter. It burned the tender skin under my tongue. I took a long swallow of water and forced myself to smile. There, I said, all gone. Good boy, Natasha murmured, patting my hand. Now, go lie down. You look exhausted. I shuffled down the hallway and locked myself in the bathroom. I turned on the faucet and coughed loudly. Then I spit the dissolving blue pill into a tissue. The dye bled across the paper like ink in water. I flushed it and watched it swirl away. If I had swallowed it, I would have been finished. I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were steady, my jaw firm. I was not confused. I was not weak. I went to bed fully dressed beneath the covers and waited. By 2 a.m, the house was silent. I lay on my side, breathing slow and even pretending to be drugged into oblivion. The bedroom door creaked open. A thin blade of light cut across the floor. Lavender lotion drifted through the dark. Natasha. She moved carefully to my nightstand. She knew exactly where my wallet was. I heard leather scrape against wood. The zipper slid open. My heart pounded so loudly I feared she would hear it. She was stealing from me. I heard plastic slide free, my debit card, the one tied to my pension, the only account I used for daily expenses. She replaced the wallet and stood over me. I could feel her gaze on my face. I wondered if she remembered our wedding day, if she remembered nights counting coins to buy groceries. Sleep tight, old man, she whispered. No warmth, no love. The door clicked shut. I opened my eyes to the dark. A single tear slipped into my ear. Not grief. Rage. Morning came bright and cheerful. A lie. I dressed and walked into the kitchen. Natasha stood at the stove, humming softly as coffee brewed. She looked content. Victorious. Good morning, Caleb, she said sweetly. How did you sleep? Like the dead, I replied. I sat down and patted my pockets, checked my shirt, stood up and looked around the floor. What's wrong? She asked, sipping coffee, watching me over the rim. My wallet, my card's gone. I used it yesterday for gas. Now it's gone. She sighed theatrically. Oh, Caleb, not again. First your glasses, now your card. You're always misplacing things lately. I didn't lose it, I said firmly. Someone took it. She laughed short and sharp. Who would take your little pension card? Me, Cameron, Kenya. Why would we want that? You probably dropped it, or threw it away. You get confused when you're tired. She wore a silk robe and stood like she owned everything. I knew the card was in her purse. I knew she would drain the account. I knew she would use my own money to secure their loyalty. But it wasn't time to fight. Maybe you're right, I muttered, rubbing my forehead. I feel foggy. Head hurts. Must be the new medicine. See, she said gently. You just need time to adjust. Don't worry about the bank. I'll call them. I'll handle the finances now. You're too old to stress about money. Just rest. I'll take care of everything. She smiled. It was the smile of a jailer locking a cell. She thought she had taken my money. She thought she had taken my dignity. She thought she had taken my mind. She had only taken the bait. At 7 sharp, Cameron walked in without knocking. Thick leather portfolio under his arm, expensive bourbon in hand. He tossed his keys onto the granite counter with deliberate force. Metal clanged against stone. He was testing me. I flinched. I made sure he saw it. "Hey, Pops," he said loudly, like addressing a deaf dog. I looked up from my plate with wide, uncertain eyes. He grinned, and the game continued. Cameron pulled out a chair and sat directly across from me. He placed the thick leather portfolio on the table and nudged it forward just enough for me to read the tab. Property valuation and liquidation strategy. He didn't bother hiding it. He wanted me to see it. He wanted me to understand that my home, my life, was already reduced to a calculation. Natasha entered from the kitchen carrying roast potatoes. She smiled at Cameron, a warm, genuine smile I hadn't seen directed at me in 2 decades. "Hello, darling," she said. "Long day." Cameron loosened his tie and poured himself a drink without asking. "Brutal," he replied. "The market's shifting. We need to move assets before the bubble bursts." He looked straight at me when he said it. His eyes were pale and cold. He took a sip of bourbon and surveyed the dining room. The oak cabinets I installed, the molding I cut by hand, the fixtures I repaired year after year. "This place is a time capsule," he said. "Smells like 1980. We'll gut it. Open concept, modern lines. Toss all this junk." Junk. I lowered my eyes to my plate. My fork tightened in my hand. That junk was overtime shifts. That junk was calloused hands and midnight repairs. "What's that?" he asked, suddenly pointing at the sketchbook near my elbow. I had brought it out of habit. I sketched while I ate. It was how I thought. Pages filled with gear ratios, fuel systems, valve timings. The same notebook that held the original transmission design they had stolen 30 years ago. The same design that had just won me $5 million. It's nothing I said trying to slide a napkin over it. Just drawings. Cameron snatched it away. "Let's see." He flipped through the pages and laughed a dry, hacking sound. "Kenya, look at this. Your dad sits around drawing circles and lines." Kenya leaned in. She studied the detailed schematics. For a second, I hoped she would recognize the precision. I remembered helping her with geometry using those same angles and arcs. She rolled her eyes. "Daddy, you're still playing with that stuff." Cameron tossed the notebook back. It landed open a page of intricate fuel injection diagrams exposed. "Pops," he said, leaning back. "We're in the age of AI. Computers design engines in seconds. Nobody uses pencils anymore. This is garbage. You're obsolete." Obsoleta. The same word the executives used when they fired me. They were wrong then. Cameron was wrong now. I wanted to tell him that this garbage had defeated a billion-dollar corporation in federal court. I wanted to tell him my so-called obsolete brain was worth more than everything he owned. Instead, I stared at my plate. "You're probably right," I muttered. "Just an old man with a pencil." "Exactly." Cameron poured more bourbon. His hand trembled slightly, drunk or wired. His pupils were small and sharp. He leaned forward. His elbow struck his wineglass. Time slowed. The tall crystal goblet tipped. Dark red wine surged over the rim and spilled across the table straight onto the open sketchbook. "No," the word tore out of me. I reached but too late. The wine soaked into the paper, bleeding through the pages. White turned purple. Ink dissolved, lines blurred, calculations melted into stains. That book wasn't scrap. It was proof. It was history. It was the only physical evidence left of the years I spent fighting to be heard. Cameron didn't apologize, didn't reach for a towel. He watched. "Oops," he said flatly. My hands began to shake. This time it wasn't an act. I turned to Kenya. Surely she would see the disrespect. She giggled. "Oh, Cameron, you're so clumsy," she said lightly. Then she looked at me. "It's just scrap paper, Daddy. We can buy you a coloring book if you want to draw." Scrap paper. The room felt airless. The ticking clock on the wall grew loud. Tick, tick, tick. I looked down at the steak knife beside my plate, heavy, serrated, wooden handle worn smooth by years of use. I picked it up. My knuckles whitened around the grip. I looked at Cameron's throat, exposed as he laughed at something Natasha whispered, a vein pulse beneath his skin. One strike. That was all it would take. One strike to silence that laugh. One strike to carve respect into him. My forearm tightened, muscles coiled. I could feel the violence pressing against my ribs, demanding release. I began to lift the knife. Then I glanced through the dining room window. The streetlight had flickered on, casting a pale glow over my old Ford truck in the driveway. The glove box was shut, but inside it sat a check for $5.3 million. If I struck Cameron now, I would lose everything. Prison, confiscation, ruin. They would take the money. They would take the house. They would call me violent, unstable. They would say the medication was justified. I drew in a slow, shaking breath, forced my fingers to open. The knife slipped from my grip and clattered against the china plate. The sharp metallic crack echoed like a gunshot. The room fell silent. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me. "I'm sorry," I murmured, lowering my head. "My hands are slippery. I'm clumsy." Cameron smirked. "Careful, Pops. Sharp objects aren't for you. You might hurt yourself." Natasha rose without a word. She picked up my soaked sketchbook. The pages sagged in her hand. "I'll throw this away," she said calmly. "It's ruined. You don't need it. Just clutter." She crumpled the wet drawings and tossed them into the trash like a used napkin. 30 years of proof, gone. "I can't eat," I said quietly. "My stomach hurts." "Go lie down," Natasha replied, already refilling Cameron's glass. "Big day tomorrow. We're seeing Dr. Hill." Of course we were. My legs felt heavy as I stood. I left the room. Their voices resumed before I reached the hallway. Kitchen renovations, market timing. They were already spending the profits from selling my house. I didn't go to the bedroom. I went outside. The garage was cold and dim, thick with the smell of oil and sawdust. My tools hung in perfect order along the wall. My workbench stood clean and solid. This was the only place I still felt like myself. I locked the door and leaned against the bench. The sob I'd been holding back tore loose, shaking my chest. I wiped my face with a shop rag. Then I reached behind the tool chest and pulled out the burner phone I'd bought with cash 3 days earlier. Natasha tracked my regular phone. She'd installed an app claiming it was for safety. I dialed Ophelia. She answered immediately. "Price, it's Caleb. Are you safe?" "I'm in the garage. They're inside drinking my wine and planning my funeral." "Did you take the pills?" "Number 1, I spit them out, but they destroyed my drawings. Cameron brought valuation papers. They're ready to sell." Her voice hardened. "Focus? Anger is a luxury. You're a soldier behind enemy lines." I almost lost control. "That's what they want," she said. "They want you to snap. You do that, you lose the money. The check's in my truck." "Good. Don't deposit it. If it hits a joint account, she gets half instantly. We secure it first." "How?" "I'm creating a blind trust. We move the funds there. Untouchable. But we need to meet. I need your signature and any evidence." "When?" "Tonight. Can you slip out?" "They're drunk. Soon. Meet me at the all-night diner on 4th. 3 a.m., wear a hat, park behind the building." She paused. "And Caleb, don't drink anything they give you. Nothing. Use the garage tap if you're thirsty." "I understand. One more thing," she said. "Why now?" I looked at the shadowed house beyond the garage door. "Because they're hungry," I answered. "They're wolves. They think I'm wounded." A brief silence. They forgot something Ophelia said. "What? Rams have horns." For the first time that night, I smiled. I hung up and hid the phone. At the utility sink, I turned on the tap. The water was cold and metallic. I drank from my hands. It tasted like survival. I unlocked the door and went back inside. The lights were low. Cameron lay sprawled on the couch, snoring, mouth open. Pathetic. I stepped past him and entered the bedroom. Natasha was already in bed. She was pretending to sleep. Her breathing was too steady, too controlled. I lay down beside her and the dark eyes open. The war had begun. I changed into my pajamas and slipped into bed beside the woman who had planned to erase my mind. The house creaked softly in the dark. I lay still, staring at the red glow of the alarm clock. 100, 200, 2:30. Time. I eased out of bed without a sound. Dark coveralls, boots, hat. I moved through the hallway like a shadow, past Cameron snoring on the couch, past Kenya's old bedroom door, out the back entrance. The night air was sharp and cold. Clouds swallowed the moon. Good weather for secrets. I climbed into my truck but didn't start it. I shifted into neutral and let it roll down the driveway. Gravel whispered beneath the tires, muted by the wind. 2 blocks away, I turned the key. The engine roared alive, loud, defiant. I drove toward 4th Street, toward the woman who would help me sharpen my horns. I was not prey. I was Caleb Thornton, and this was war. Earl's Diner glowed weakly at 3 in the morning. Neon flickered like it was fighting to stay alive. Truckers and sleepless souls filled the booths. Ophelia Price sat in the back, immaculate in a razor-sharp suit. She looked like a predator among strays. Her eyes found me instantly. I slid across from her and placed the thick envelope on the table. My hand stayed on it. "You look terrible," she said, signaling for coffee. "I slept next to someone poisoning me," I replied. "I spat out a blue pill tonight that would have turned me into a vegetable." She leaned forward, voice dropping low. "I don't have much time, Caleb. I ran a background check. Cameron owes $2 million, not to banks, to men who break bones." I nodded slowly. I knew he was desperate. He needs your house, immediately. And the law gives him a weapon emergency guardianship. What does that mean? "It's a legal trap," she said. "If they convince a judge you're mentally incapacitated, even temporarily, they gain control of your finances, your medical decisions, everything. They can freeze accounts, sell property, claim it's for your care. But I'm fine," I snapped. "I just want a federal case." "It doesn't matter," she cut in sharply. "Truth is irrelevant in family court. Documentation wins. If your wife claims instability and a doctor confirms cognitive decline, a judge signs the order. Once that happens, your house can be sold before you even file an appeal." A chill slid down my spine. "They're building a record," she continued. "Every forgotten item, every raised voice, every moment of frustration. It's all evidence. And tomorrow, they escalate." "What do you mean?" I accessed Natasha's synced calendar. She shares it with Cameron. "A Dr. Hill is scheduled to visit your house in the morning." "Who is he?" "A psychiatrist with a reputation. He runs a private facility outside town. He signs paperwork for a price. If he shows up tomorrow, it won't be to evaluate you. It'll be to declare you unfit." They weren't stealing money. They were erasing me. "What do I do?" I asked, gripping the table edge. "You become flawless," Ophelia said. "No anger, no sarcasm, no hesitation. Calm, rational, boring. If you show emotion, it's agitation. If you pause, it's confusion. You must be controlled." She slid a thick document across the table. "The blind trust," she said. "Once signed, the settlement moves beyond their reach. Completely separate, untouchable." I looked at the pages, then at her. "And if they try tomorrow?" She met my eyes. "Then we make sure the wolves realize the ram has horns." "Sign this," Ophelia said, sliding the documents toward me. "We're creating the Blind Mechanic Trust. Once the patent settlement moves into it, the money is no longer legally yours. If they manage to secure guardianship, they still won't be able to touch assets you don't technically own." I didn't hesitate. I signed where she pointed. My hand didn't shake, not once. I slid the check across the table. "Keep it safe," I said. "I will," she replied. "Now go home. Get back in without being noticed. And Caleb. Yes, tomorrow morning, you're fighting for your life. Don't blink." I drove back under a moonless sky. 2 blocks from the house, I killed the engine and let the truck roll the rest of the way. I slipped inside undetected and climbed into bed. Natasha shifted and murmured something about money. I didn't sleep. I watched dawn bleed into the room. At 9 sharp, the doorbell rang. I was already seated in the living room, with the newspaper open posture, straight expression, calm, clean shirt, fresh shave, steady hands. Natasha answered the door in her church dress voice, coated in syrup. "Oh, Dr. Hill, thank you for coming on such short notice. We're so worried about him." She ushered him inside. Dr. Hill was tall and narrow, wearing an expensive gray suit that fit like it belonged to someone else. His face was sharp and small-eyed like a ferret's. He carried a leather notebook and looked first at Natasha. "Is this the patient?" he asked, as if I were an appliance. "Yes," Natasha said softly, dabbing imaginary tears. "My husband, Caleb. He's been confused." I folded the paper and stood. I extended my hand. "Good morning, doctor. I didn't realize we were expecting company." He blinked. He hadn't expected coherence. He shook my hand. His grip was damp. "Just a friendly visit," he said. "Please sit." He took the chair opposite me. Natasha sat beside him, glancing toward the kitchen where Cameron and Kenya were hiding. "So, Caleb," he began, flipping open the notebook. "Your wife says you've been experiencing memory issues." "I'm 70, I said calmly. I misplace my keys sometimes, but I can still recite the firing order of a 1965 Mustang from memory. He scribbled something. Fixation on past mechanical details, he muttered. He looked up. Tell me about yesterday. I worked, came home, had dinner. Do you remember the fire? The air thickened. Fire? Yes. Natasha says you attempted to burn the house down, turned on the gas stove and tried to light a newspaper. She intervened. Then I looked at my wife. She stared at the carpet trembling on cue. He was so angry, she whispered. He said the house was cold. He screamed. I was terrified. It was elaborate, detailed. Arson meant danger. Danger meant emergency guardianship. The anger surged through me like heat through steel. Don't blink, Caleb. I inhaled slowly. That's interesting, I said evenly, but it's impossible. Why impossible? Dr. Hill asked, already writing. We have an electric stove, I replied. GE Profile Induction Cooktop, installed 5 years ago. No flame. Safety lock engaged. You can't light a newspaper with it. You're welcome to inspect it. His pen stopped. He glanced at Natasha. She paled. Oh, she said too quickly. Maybe it was the toaster. Yes, he tried to put paper in the toaster. I held Dr. Hill's gaze. A legitimate physician would have questioned the contradiction. He didn't. Confusion about household appliances, he wrote. Agitation when confronted. Facts didn't matter. The script was pre-written. He tried another angle. What's today's date? Tuesday, October 24th. The president, I answered. Count backward from 100 by sevens. 93, 86, 79, 72, 65, 58. I didn't falter. Numbers were my trade, my rhythm. He frowned. Why are you so defensive, he asked. I'm answering your questions. Your hands are clenched. Your jaw is tight. Do you feel like hurting Natasha? No. Do you believe people are plotting against you? There it was. If I said yes, paranoia. If I said no, denial. I chose precision. I feel like a man who's worked hard his whole life, I said. I feel like a husband answering questions about a fire that never happened. He closed the notebook sharply. I've seen enough. Natasha stood quickly. Is it bad? She asked, eyes glittering. We'll discuss privately, he said. But yes, the indicators are clear. He turned to me. Take care, Caleb. Get rest. They walked toward the door. I remained seated. I watched him slide the notebook into his pocket. I saw the page before it disappeared. Large, jagged handwriting. Probable dementia, paranoid ideation, recommendation, emergency guardianship evaluation. The verdict had been decided before he arrived, but so had mine. Patient exhibits advanced dementia with paranoid delusions. Immediate custodial care recommended. Danger to self and others. He had written the diagnosis before he ever stepped inside my house. My answers hadn't mattered. The electric stove hadn't mattered. The math hadn't mattered. They had purchased the verdict. I sat in the silence after they left, listening to whispers drift from the porch. Cameron laughed. They thought the trap had closed. They believed I would shuffle quietly into a state facility drugged and harmless. They were right about one thing. I was dangerous, just not to myself. I walked into the kitchen, took a sealed bottle of water from the fridge, cracked it open and drank. Then I stepped into the garage. I needed tools. I needed to think. Because tonight they would try to take me. And I would be ready. I sat on a milk crate behind a stack of old tires when my burner phone buzzed. Ophelia's voice came tight and urgent. Do not take your truck. Do not take your phone. What? My tech checked the shared cloud account. They installed a tracking app on your cell yesterday, and Cameron placed a GPS tag under your rear bumper. They're monitoring you. If you go downtown, they'll know. If you step into a lawyer's office, they'll know. A chill ran through me. I wasn't just trapped in my house. I was tracked in my own life. I looked at my truck, 20 years of loyalty, now a spy. My regular phone blinked on the bench, a silent beacon announcing my location. I need to deposit the check, I said. You need the blind trust first, Ophelia replied. The paperwork's ready at First National. Manager's name is Mr. Sterling. He's briefed. But if Natasha sees you heading downtown, she'll call Dr. Hill. They'll claim you're wandering. Police will intercept you. I ended the call and stared at the check in my pocket. $5.3 million. Freedom if I could reach it. I needed a decoy. I grabbed my regular phone and drove my Ford slowly down the street. Speed limit. Predictable. Exactly where a confused old man might go on a weekday morning. I drove to Otis's repair yard. Otis had been my friend since Vietnam. One eye, solid heart. He shut off his welding torch the moment he saw my face. I need a favor, I said. No questions. Done, he answered. I handed him my phone. Take this to the park. Sit by the duck pond for 2 hours. Then come back. He nodded. And I need your truck. He glanced at his rusted Chevy. No bumper. Paint peeling. It pulls left, he said. Brakes are soft. Perfect. I left my Ford in his lot. The tracker would show me there. Then the park. Just an old mechanic wasting time. I climbed into Otis's truck, pulled my hat low, and took back roads toward the city. 3 blocks from First National, I parked and walked. Grease-stained coveralls. Muddy boots. People stepped aside as I approached the revolving doors. They saw grime and age, not leverage. The cold air of the bank hit me like winter. Marble floors. High ceilings. It smelled like money, and I had come to protect mine. A security guard stepped directly into my path the moment I crossed the marble floor. He was broad-shouldered hand, resting casually, but not casually on his belt. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked. His tone wasn't helpful. It was territorial. "I need to see Mr. Sterling," I said. His eyes dragged over my grease-stained coveralls and muddy boots. A smirk tugged at his mouth. "Mr. Sterling is the branch manager," he said. "He doesn't take walk-ins, especially not for accounts like yours. The ATM's outside." I didn't step back. I didn't blink. I felt the weight of the check against my chest. "I'm not here for the ATM," I said evenly. "Tell him Caleb Thornton is here." He chuckled. "Look, old-timer, you're making a scene. Head outside before I escort you." People were staring now. A teller leaned toward her coworker and whispered. To them, I was exactly what Natasha wanted the world to see, a confused old black man causing trouble in a bank lobby. I reached into my pocket. The guard stiffened. I pulled out the check. I unfolded it carefully and slammed it onto the marble counter beside us. The crack echoed across the lobby. 550美元です. The court seal gleamed. The zeros were sharp and undeniable. The guard's smirk vanished. His eyes widened. He swallowed. "Get Mr. Sterling," I said quietly. "Now." 5 minutes later, I was seated in a leather chair inside a corner office overlooking the skyline. Mr. Sterling himself poured me coffee. The man who didn't take walk-ins now treated me like royalty. We moved quickly. Papers were signed. The Blind Mechanic Trust was activated. The settlement funds transferred out of my name and into the trust with Ophelia as trustee and me as beneficiary. Legally insulated. Untouchable. Even if they declared me incompetent 10 times over, they couldn't seize what I no longer technically owned. When I shook Mr. Sterling's hand, something heavy lifted off my shoulders. The money was safe. I stepped back into the main lobby, adjusting my hat, heading toward the exit. "Come on, you have to approve it. The collateral is solid." I froze. I knew that voice. Through the glass partition of the loan department, Cameron stood at a desk red-faced and sweating, arguing with a loan officer who looked bored beyond belief. "I cannot approve this, Mr. Sinclair," the officer said flatly. "Your credit score is below 500. Every line of credit is maxed. And the property listed as collateral is not in your name. It belongs to your father-in-law." "He's signing it over next week," Cameron snapped. "It's done. I just need a bridge loan. 50 grand, temporary. $50,000. He was begging. The shark wasn't a predator. He was a desperate gambler drowning in debt. I had to pass him to leave. I lowered my hat until the brim brushed my nose. I hunched my shoulders and adopted the shuffle of a tired laborer. I walked past the glass. Cameron slammed his palm on the desk. "Do you know who I am?" He turned and his eyes swept the lobby. They landed on me. I kept walking, 10 feet from the revolving door. "Pops," he whispered. I didn't stop. "Pops." I pushed through the door and stepped into the heat of the street. I turned left quick, but not running. The door spun behind me. Cameron stepped onto the sidewalk, scanning wildly. I slipped into an alley and pressed myself against the brick wall, holding my breath. His footsteps approached the mouth of the alley. "No," he muttered. "Can't be. The app says he's at the park." He laughed nervously. "I'm seeing things." He turned and went back inside to beg for money he would never receive. I waited another minute before walking calmly back to Otis's truck. My hands were shaking, but I was smiling. Cameron had seen me, and doubted himself. That doubt would grow. It would make him sloppy. I switched vehicles at the scrapyard and reclaimed my phone. "Ducks eat well," I asked Otis. "They ate good," he said. "So did I." I drove home. Natasha was waiting. "Did you enjoy the park?" she asked, eyes sharp. "It was peaceful," I replied. "Fed the birds." She glanced at my boots. "Clean." A flicker of suspicion crossed her face. That afternoon, Cameron returned pacing like a trapped animal. I watched him over a magazine. I saw him. Cameron hissed to Natasha. At First National. Natasha laughed. Impossible. The tracker showed him at the scrapyard in the park. I know what I saw. You're stressed, she snapped. Caleb's senile. He doesn't know what day it is. How would he get downtown? Cameron ran a hand through his hair. If he has money we don't know about, we're finished. We can't wait for paperwork. We need something big. Something that proves he's dangerous. Natasha went still. You're right, she said softly. We need an accident. My stomach tightened. Gas, she continued. Old men forget to turn things off. They leave gas running. Judges love negligence. We have electric appliances. There's a gas line for the fireplace, she replied calmly. And a heater in the basement. Valves fail, especially if tampered with. They were willing to risk blowing up the house to trap me. Desperation had sharpened them. I went to bed at 9, fully clothed beneath the covers. In my hand was a silver serving spoon I had reshaped on the garage concrete. The handle was filed into a narrow, hardened edge. Not a spoon anymore. A pry bar. A weapon. I lay still listening. The refrigerator hummed. Wind rattled the window. Then, a faint hiss. Soft at first, like a snake sliding through grass. I slipped from bed silently and crept to the hallway. The sound grew louder near the basement door. Gas. They weren't bluffing. I descended the steps carefully. The smell hit me halfway down, sharp metallic. In the dim light I saw it. The valve on the basement heater had been twisted open, just enough. If I flipped a light switch upstairs, the whole house would ignite. They planned to discover me confused in the basement, or rescue me heroically, or let the explosion speak for itself. I didn't panic. I turned the valve off slowly. Then I opened 2 small basement windows for ventilation. I went back upstairs, wiping my hands on my pants. I could confront them. I could scream. Instead, I returned to bed. The game wasn't about anger. It was about timing. I lay there and waited. And upstairs, the wolves believed the sheep was sleeping. They had no idea the ram was awake and sharpening his horns. I sat up in bed. The smell hit me immediately sharp, sulfurous, unmistakable. Rotten eggs, mercaptan, the chemical they add to natural gas so you know you're about to die. It was seeping in from under the door. They were pumping it into my room. They had likely opened the hallway heater valve or rigged something more direct. It didn't matter how. The result was the same. The air was turning into poison. I swung my legs off the bed. Already my head felt light. Gas displaces oxygen. It makes you drowsy, weak, compliant. That was the plan. I would pass out. They would call 911, drag me onto the lawn, cry to the fire department that I had tried to kill myself, tell the police I'd been confused tampering with gas lines. A tragic old man. A perfect narrative. I rushed to the window and shoved at the sash. It didn't budge. Painted shut. Maybe even screwed in from outside. I slammed my palm against the glass. Double-pane thermal glass, strong enough to resist casual force. Breaking it would take time and noise. Noise would alert them. I grabbed the bedroom door handle. It didn't turn. Locked from the hallway. I was sealed inside. The room was becoming a chamber. I coughed. My lungs felt heavy like I was breathing through wet wool. My eyes stung. My thoughts slowed at the edges. I dropped to my knees and shoved a towel along the gap beneath the door, where the gas seeped strongest. It wasn't a solution, just a delay. I looked at the hinges. Old brass, painted over a dozen times, and mounted on my side. Their mistake. They thought a locked handle was enough. They forgot what I did for 50 years. They forgot I dismantled engines for breakfast. I pulled the sharpened silver spoon from my pocket. My fingers tingled. Oxygen deprivation was creeping in. I had to stay methodical. I wedged the flattened tip beneath the top hinge pin. The paint cracked. I pushed against the door frame for leverage. It shifted barely. I pushed again. My vision blurred at the edges. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Move, I whispered. The pin popped upward. I yanked it free. 1. I dropped to the bottom hinge. The air down low was thicker, sourer. I held my breath and drove the spoon beneath the rusted pin. This one fought back. The metal dug into my palm. The spoon handle bent slightly. I pushed harder. Metal screeched. The pin jerked loose. 2. The middle hinge. I was dizzy now. The room felt underwater. A ringing filled my head. No, not here. Not like this. I hammered the spoon handle with the heel of my boot. The hinge pin shot out and clattered onto the floor. 3. I grabbed the knob and pulled. The door sagged inward, free from its frame. Hallway air hit my face. Not clean, but better. I stumbled out. The smell was strong here, too. The source sat on the floor beside my door, a small portable camping stove. Valve open. Gas hissing softly into the house. It was staged beautifully. They would say I'd been experimenting. I leaned down and turned the valve closed. The hiss stopped. Silence returned. I walked down the hallway, legs shaky but mind sharpening. I opened the front door, then the back door. I raised every window on the first floor. Wind surged through the house, sweeping poison out. I poured myself a glass of water in the kitchen and sat calmly on the sofa. I waited. 10 minutes later, hurried footsteps thundered upstairs. Natasha came rushing down in her nightgown, hair wild, phone in hand, ready to dial 911, ready to scream. She expected smoke, or a body. Instead, she found me sitting upright, sipping water. She froze. The phone slipped from her hand. "Caleb," she breathed. "Good morning," I said calmly. "You're awake." I smelled gas." "Yes," I replied. "Someone left a camping stove running outside my bedroom." "That's dangerous, Natasha. You should be more careful." She stared at me like I had risen from the grave. Cameron appeared at the top of the stairs. "Is it done?" he asked sleepily. "Did you call?" He saw me. His jaw dropped. "Hey, Pops," he croaked. "What are you doing up?" "Enjoying fresh air," I said. "You two might want to open a window." I sipped water. They knew. I knew, but neither side could speak the truth. Because truth would mean attempted murder. "Go back to bed," I told them. "I'll handle the house," since apparently I'm the only one who knows how a stove works. They turned and climbed the stairs like prisoners. I stayed awake until sunrise. Alive, angry. The rules had changed. 2 days later, Kenya announced she was throwing me a birthday party. I wasn't turning 70 for 3 more months, but she insisted we celebrate while we still can. It wasn't a celebration. It was evidence collection. Saturday at 6, the house filled with strangers. Not my people. My friends wear denim and smell like oil. These guests arrived in Teslas and wore shoes worth more than my first car. Cameron's clients. Cameron's creditors. They sipped liquor from my cabinet and studied me like a curiosity. As I sat in my armchair wearing my best Sunday suit. 5 minutes before guests arrived, Natasha accidentally spilled coffee on my lapel. She dabbed at it, only smearing it darker. Costume design. I was meant to look stained, neglected, diminished. Kenya floated through the room, holding her phone high. Ring light clipped on. Live streaming. "Here's the birthday boy," she chirped, shoving the camera in my face. "Say hi, Daddy. He's having a good day today. He recognizes me." A woman in red whispered, "Oh, how sweet." I forced a smile. "Hello," I said evenly. "I'm happy to be here." "Such lucidity," someone murmured. My hands tightened around the chair arms. I wanted to stand and tell them I'd engineered a transmission system that beat $1 billion corporation in federal court. But I didn't move. "Do not blink." Cameron clapped his hands loudly. "Attention, everyone." The room quieted. He wrapped an arm around Kenya like they were posing for a lifestyle magazine. "We have a very special gift for Pops," he announced. "We know things have been getting harder. Little things, like remembering time or food." A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the room. "So, we got him something that's practical," Cameron continued. "Something to help preserve his dignity." He reached behind the sofa and pulled out a large silver-wrapped box. He walked toward me, eyes gleaming. "Open it, Pops." I took the box. Light. Too light. I untied the ribbon, removed the paper, lifted the lid. Inside sat a bright yellow plastic helmet with foam padding and chin strap. Beside it, a large box of children's flashcards. Early cognitive reinforcement kit. Alphabet cards, shape sorting blocks, a laminated chart labeled Daily Routine Tracker. The room burst into restrained laughter. "Oh, Cameron," someone said. Kenya leaned closer with the camera. "Isn't it thoughtful?" she cooed. "We just want to keep Daddy safe." "Safe." Cameron crouched beside me. "You can wear the helmet around the house," he said loudly, "in case you fall." More laughter. I looked at the helmet, at the flashcards, at the faces watching me disintegrate. They wanted humiliation. They wanted footage. They wanted rage. Instead, I reached into the box and picked up a flashcard. A simple card with the letter A. "Apple," I said calmly. Then another. "B. Bearing." The guest quieted slightly. I lifted the helmet. "Good safety design," I remarked. "Impact-resistant polymer, lightweight, probably ASTM rated." Cameron's smile flickered. I set the helmet gently on the coffee table. "Thank you," I said. thoughtful. Kenya blinked. No outburst. No confusion. No meltdown. Just calm. The tension shifted. Cameron straightened. Maybe we should demonstrate, he suggested loudly. Pops, why don't you try the cards? He grabbed one and held it up. What's this, Pops? It showed a simple clock face. What time is it? He asked. I glanced at the grandfather clock in the hallway. 6:27, I said. He checked his watch. 6:27. A few guests exchanged looks. Cameron grabbed another. Spelled dog. D-O-G. He flipped another. What's 7 times 8? 56. The laughter had died completely now. Kenya lowered her phone slightly. Cameron forced a chuckle. See, sometimes he's sharp. I leaned back in my chair. I appreciate the concern, I said evenly. But if you'd like to test memory, I can recite the torque specifications for a 1968 Camaro engine block. Silence. A man near the window cleared his throat. Cameron's jaw tightened. The party resumed awkwardly. Conversation fractured. The narrative had cracked, but I saw it in Natasha's eyes. This wasn't over. They had tried poison. They had tried humiliation. They would try something bigger, and I would be ready, because I wasn't declining. I was documenting, and every performance they staged was building the case that would bury them. The sheep had survived the gas chamber, and the wolves were starting to smell something else in the room. Fear. I pulled out the plastic object. It was a bib, a baby bib. It was huge. It was made of rubber. It had a picture of a cartoon duck on the front. At the bottom, there was a trough to catch spilled food. I pulled out the other object. It was a watch, but not a real watch. It was a toy. It was made of red and blue plastic. It had a face the size of a saucer with giant numbers. It was a toy for a toddler learning to tell time. To keep your shirt clean, Pops, Cameron said. His voice carried to the back of the room. And so you know when it is time for your nap. The silence held for a second. Then it broke. The room erupted in laughter. It was not warm laughter. It was cruel. It was the sound of a mob mocking the weak. They laughed at the old man holding the baby toys. They laughed at the mechanic who had been reduced to an infant. Kenya zoomed in with her camera. She was laughing too. Look, guys, she said to her followers. We are just trying to help him out. He is so cute with his little watch. I looked at Kenya, my daughter, my blood. I looked at her laughing face, and the world seemed to stop. The noise of the party faded into a dull roar. I remembered a day 15 years ago. It was a Tuesday. It was raining. Kenya was 17. She was crying at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had been invited to the prom by the captain of the football team. She needed a dress. She had found the perfect one. It was blue silk. It cost $400. I did not have $400. The shop had been slow. We were behind on the mortgage. I had holes in my work boots. But I could not bear to see her cry. I could not bear to see her feel less than the other girls. I stopped eating lunch for a month. I worked extra shifts on the weekends. I sold my grandfather's gold pocket watch to a pawn shop downtown. It was the only heirloom I had. I sold it for $300. I scraped together the rest from the change jar. I bought her the dress. I brought it home in a plastic bag to keep it dry. She screamed when she saw it. She hugged me so hard I lost my breath. You are the best daddy in the world, she said. I love you so much. I wore cardboard in my boots that winter. I was hungry every afternoon, but it was worth it to see her smile. Now that same girl was standing in front of me, holding a phone like a weapon. She was selling my dignity for likes on the internet. She was laughing at the man who had starved for her. The pain in my chest was sharp. It was sharper than the knife I had almost used on Cameron. It was the pain of a heart breaking into dust. But I did not cry. I did not frown. I remembered the check. $5.3 million. I remembered the blind trust. I remembered the plan. I stood up. I moved slowly. I let my knees creak. I held up the yellow bib. Thank you, son, I said. My voice was loud enough to be heard over the laughter. It is a thoughtful gift. I put the bib around my neck. I fastened the Velcro. The plastic smelled of chemicals. I looked ridiculous. I knew I looked ridiculous. I picked up the toy watch. I strapped it to my wrist. It pinched my skin. I am glad you worry about my eating habits, I said. I smiled at the camera. I smiled at the strangers laughing at me. Then I turned to Cameron. I opened my arms. I want to thank you, I said. Come here, son. Give your old pops a hug. Cameron hesitated. He looked disgusted. He did not want to touch me. But the camera was rolling. He had to play the part of the loving son-in-law. He stepped forward. He leaned in. He patted my back stiffly. I wrapped my arms around him. I am strong. My arms are thick from lifting engines. I squeezed him. I squeezed him hard enough to make the air leave his lungs. I felt his body tense. I felt his panic. I leaned my head close to his. I put my lips right next to his ear. "Thank you for the watch, Cameron," I whispered. My voice was low. Only he could hear it. "It is good to know what time it is." He tried to pull away, but I held him fast. "Because time is running out," I whispered. "I know about the Porsche, Cameron. I know you borrowed $200,000 to buy it, and I know you have not made a payment in 4 months." He froze. He went rigid in my arms. "The bank called the house this morning." I lied. "They were looking for you. They said they are coming to repossess it on Monday. They said they are going to tow it right out of the driveway while the neighbors watch." I felt him shudder. The smell of his expensive cologne turned sour with the scent of sudden fear. I pulled back. I looked him in the eyes. His face was pale. The smirk was gone. His eyes were wide and terrified. I patted his cheek. It was a hard, heavy pat, just like he had done to me. "Enjoy the party, son," I said. I turned away from him. I looked at Kenya. She was still filming, but her smile had faltered. She saw Cameron's face. She saw the fear. She did not understand what had happened, but she knew the script had changed. I walked to the table where the cake was sitting. It was a big cake. It had a number 70 on it in icing. I cut myself a slice. I ate it with a fork. I made sure to drop a crumb on the yellow bib. I looked at Cameron across the room. He was leaning against the wall. He was drinking whiskey straight from the glass. He was checking his phone frantically. He was checking his bank accounts. He was realizing that the floor was dropping out from under him. He looked up and met my gaze. I chewed my cake. I pointed to the toy watch on my wrist. I tapped the plastic face. "Tick-tock, Cameron. Tick-tock." He mouthed 3 words to me from across the room. "You are dead." I smiled. I lifted my glass of water in a toast. Not yet, I thought. Not yet. The vibration of the burner phone in my pocket felt like an alarm clock waking me from a nightmare. I was in the garage pretending to organize my socket wrenches. I wiped the grease from my hands with a red shop rag and pulled out the phone. It was a message from Ophelia. She had sent a secure file. I tapped the screen. The document loaded slowly on the cheap data plan. It was a dossier from her private investigator. I read it standing up. My knees were too weak to sit. The investigator had dug deep into Cameron Sinclair. He had peeled back the layers of my son-in-law like a rotten onion. Cameron was not just a bad real estate agent. He was a gambler. He was a degenerate. The file showed records from underground casinos in Atlantic City and illegal sports books in Philadelphia. The numbers were staggering. Cameron had lost everything years ago. He had been borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, but Paul was tired of waiting. The last page of the report made my blood run cold. Cameron owed $2 million to a syndicate known for breaking knees and burying bodies in the Pine Barrens. The debt was called in 3 days ago. The deadline was next Tuesday. If Cameron did not pay, he would not just lose his car or his reputation. He would lose his life. I lowered the phone. It all made sense. The desperation, the gas leak, the rush to declare me incompetent. Cameron was not trying to get rich. He was trying to survive. My house was his life raft. It was worth $800,000. It was not enough to clear the debt, but it was enough to buy him time. It was enough to keep his fingers attached to his hands. He was willing to kill me to save himself, and my daughter Kenya was either too stupid to see it, or she was in on it too. I looked at the workbench. I saw a small black box. It was a diagnostic listening device I used to find engine knocks. It was a high-powered microphone with a magnetic base. It transmitted audio to a receiver up to 50 feet away. I grabbed it. I grabbed the receiver and a set of headphones. I walked back into the house. The air was thick with tension. Cameron was pacing in the dining room. Natasha was in the kitchen. Kenya had left to go shopping with money she did not have. I walked into the dining room. I pretended to drop my napkin. I knelt down. I stuck the magnetic microphone to the metal bracket underneath the heavy oak table. It was invisible unless you were lying on the floor. I stood up. Cameron glared at me. "What are you doing, old man?" he asked. "And just picking up my napkin," I said. "I am clumsy, remember." I shuffled out of the room. I went back to the garage. I put on the headphones. I turned up the volume. The sound was crystal clear. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I could hear Cameron breathing. It sounded like a bellows fanning a fire. "Ah, Mom, come in here," Cameron shouted. "We need to talk." I heard Natasha's footsteps. I heard a chair scrape against the floor. "What is it, Cameron?" she asked. Her voice was tired. "I am making dinner." "Forget dinner," Cameron screamed. The sound spiked in my ears. I flinched. "Forget the food, Natasha. We are out of time. I got a call an hour ago. They know where I live. They know where Kenya shops. They said if I do not have the first installment by Wednesday, they are going to start mailing pieces of me to you." "Cameron, calm down," Natasha said. "We are moving as fast as we can. Dr. Hill submitted the paperwork. The court date is in 2 weeks." 2 weeks! Cameron roared. "I do not have 2 weeks. I do not have 2 days. I am a dead man, Natasha. Do you understand that they will kill me, and then they will come for Kenya? Do you want that? Do you want your daughter to be a widow? Or worse?" I heard Natasha gasp. "No, Cameron, of course not." "Then we have to end this," Cameron said. His voice dropped to a hiss. "We cannot wait for the courts. We cannot wait for the state to process the guardianship. We need to liquidate the asset now. And we cannot do that while Caleb is breathing." I sat on my stool in the garage. I gripped the edge of the workbench. I stared at a calendar on the wall. It was a picture of a lighthouse. I focused on the light. "What are you saying, Cameron?" Natasha asked. "You know what I am saying," Cameron said. "The gas did not work. The old fool is like a cockroach. He survived. But we cannot fail again. We need to be direct. We need to be sure." Natasha was silent. I could hear the clock ticking in the dining room. Tick, tick, tick. "You have the pills," Cameron said. "You have the heavy stuff, the ones you used to steal from the hospital, the ones for the violent patients." "I have them," Natasha whispered. "But they are strong, Cameron. Too strong. If I give him too many, his heart will stop." "That is the point," Cameron said. "His heart stops. He is 70 years old. He has a history of high blood pressure. Nobody will question it. It happens every day. Old men die in their sleep. It is natural. It is a mercy." "Murder," Natasha said. "You are talking about murder." "I am talking about survival," Cameron snapped. "It is him or me, Natasha. Choose. Choose right now. Do you want to save the senile old man who wets himself? Or do you want to save your son-in-law and your daughter? Because if I go down, I am taking everyone with me." There was a long silence. I held my breath. I waited for my wife of 40 years to say no. I waited for her to slap him. I waited for her to call the police. "Okay," Natasha said. Her voice was flat. It was dead. "Okay, you will do it tonight," Cameron said. "Tonight?" Natasha agreed. "Make sure it is enough," Cameron said. "Make sure he does not wake up." "I will use 10, she said. 10 milligrams of diazepam mixed with the beta blockers. It will stop a horse." "Good," Cameron said. "Do it after dinner. Put it in something sweet. He loves sweets." I took off the headphones. My hands were cold. My heart was beating so slow, I thought it might stop on its own. It was not fear. It was grief. The woman I loved was gone. She had died a long time ago. The creature in my kitchen was a stranger. I sat there for an hour. I watched the sun go down. I watched the shadows lengthen across the floor. I thought about the life I had built. I thought about the transmission I designed. I thought about the $5.3 million in the blind trust. They wanted me dead. They wanted my money, but they had made a mistake. They thought I was weak. They thought I was alone. I stood up. I walked to the corner of the garage. There was a potted aloe vera plant there. It was dying. The soil was dry. I went back inside the house. I walked into the living room. Cameron was watching television. He looked relaxed. He smiled at me. It was the smile of a man who thought his problems were solved. "Oh, hey, Pops," he said. "Hungry?" "Not really," I said. "My stomach is a little upset." "That is too bad," Natasha called from the kitchen. "I made cookies, and I'm heating up some milk. It will help you sleep." I walked to my bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed. I waited. 10 minutes later, Natasha walked in. She was carrying a tray. On the tray was a steaming mug of hot milk and a plate of oatmeal cookies. The smell of cinnamon and nutmeg filled the room. It smelled like comfort. It smelled like home. "Here you go, darling," she said. She set the tray on the nightstand. She sat down beside me. She put her hand on my knee. Her hand was warm. "You look tired, Caleb," she said. "You have been pacing all day. You need to rest." "I am tired, Natasha," I said. I looked at her face. I looked for a sign of hesitation. I looked for a tear. There was nothing. Her eyes were clear. Her smile was steady. She was a professional. She was doing a job. "Drink this," she said. She lifted the mug. It is warm milk with honey and spices, just like your mother used to make. It will help you relax. I took the mug. The ceramic was hot against my palms. I looked into the liquid. It was frothy and white. I could see specks of nutmeg floating on top, and I could see tiny white grains that had not fully dissolved. The poison. 10 pills. Enough to stop a horse. Enough to stop a husband. I lifted the mug to my lips. The steam hit my face. "Drink up," Natasha urged. Her voice was soft. It was a lullaby. "Drink up and sleep." I lowered the mug. I looked at her. "You are so good to me, Natasha," I said. "After all these years, you still take care of me." "I love you, Caleb," she said. The lie rolled off her tongue like oil. "I just want you to be at peace." Peace. That was what she called it. Death was peace. "I will drink it," I said. "But it is too hot right now. I will let it cool for a minute." She hesitated. She wanted to watch me drink it. She wanted to see the Adam's apple bob. She wanted to be sure. "I need to use the bathroom first," I said. I stood up. I took the mug with me. "Where are you going?" she asked sharply. "Just to the bathroom, Natasha," I said. "I am an old man. My bladder is weak. I will drink it while I am in there." I walked into the bathroom. I closed the door. I did not lock it. I turned on the faucet. I let the water run loud. I looked at the mug. I looked at the white death inside. I poured the milk into the sink. I watched it swirl down the drain. I rinsed the cup. I left a little bit of foam at the bottom. I turned off the water. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were hard. The grief was gone. Now there was only the plan. I walked back into the bedroom. I put the empty mug on the tray. "That was good," I said. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. "I feel sleepy already." Natasha looked at the empty mug. She smiled. A real smile this time. A smile of relief. A smile of victory. "Good," she said. "Lie down, Caleb. Close your eyes." I lay back on the pillows. I pulled the quilt up to my chin. Natasha stood up. She turned off the lamp. The room plunged into darkness. "Sleep well," she whispered. She walked out of the room. She closed the door. I lay in the dark. I waited for 5 minutes. Then I stuck my finger down my throat and gagged. I made wet retching sounds. I coughed. I spat into a tissue. I made it sound like I was struggling, like I was choking on my own bile. Then I went silent. I let my body go limp. I slowed my breathing. I waited for the audience. I knew they were coming. I knew they would come to check the body. They would come to steal the keys. They would come to bury me. But I was not dead. I was holding my breath. And I was waiting for the perfect moment to open my eyes. Natasha stood at the foot of the bed like a statue carved from ice. Her eyes were fixed on the mug in my hand. She was waiting for the poison to do its work. She was waiting for the old mechanic to swallow his death so she could cash out. The steam from the warm milk rose up and clouded my vision. It smelled of nutmeg and betrayal. I knew I had to act fast. If I hesitated, she would get suspicious. If I refused, she would force it down my throat or call Cameron to hold me down. I raised the mug to my lips. I let the ceramic touch my skin. It was hot. I tilted it just enough so the liquid touched my tongue. But I did not swallow. I held the toxic brew in my mouth for a split second. Then I let my body convulse. It was a performance worthy of an award. I hacked and coughed. I made my chest heave. I let my hand shake violently. "Oh, Caleb, be careful," Natasha snapped. Her voice was not concerned. It was annoyed. "You are making a mess." I let the mug tip. A splash of the white liquid hit the quilt. It soaked into the fabric, immediately leaving a wet, dark stain. I gasped for air. I dropped my head back against the pillows. I pointed to the stain. "I am sorry," I wheezed. "I spilled it. I need a towel, Natasha. It is hot." She rolled her eyes. "You are like a child, Caleb. A clumsy old child. Do not move. I will get a rag." She turned her back. She walked toward the bathroom. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. It was the sound of a ticking clock. I had 10 seconds, maybe 15. I sat up. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I looked around the room. I could not dump it on the floor. She would see the puddle. I could not drink it. I looked to my left. On the nightstand there was a large potted cactus. It was a Christmas cactus that had belonged to my mother. It was dry as a bone. I had not watered it in weeks. I poured the milk into the pot. The dry soil drank it up instantly. It vanished. There was no trace, just a slightly darker shade of dirt. I put the empty mug back on the tray. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. I lay back down. I closed my eyes halfway. Natasha came back with a wet washcloth. She scrubbed the spot on the quilt aggressively. She did not look at the mug. She assumed I had finished it. "Did you drink the rest?" she asked. She looked at the empty cup. I nodded weakly. "It was good," I whispered. "I feel dizzy, Natasha. The room is spinning." "Good," she said. "That means it is working. Just close your eyes, Caleb. Go to sleep." She turned off the bedside lamp. She walked to the door. She looked back at me one last time. In the shadows, her face looked distorted. She did not look like the woman I married. She looked like a stranger who had broken into my home. "I will check on you in a bit," she said. She closed the door. I heard the lock click. I was alone in the dark, but I was not sleepy. My adrenaline was spiking. I was wide awake. I lay there and counted the minutes. I had to time this perfectly. I had to wait until the drugs would theoretically take full effect. 30 minutes later, I heard them. They did not knock. The door handle turned. The door swung open. The hallway light flooded the room. It blinded me, but I did not blink. I stared straight ahead at a spot on the wall. I let my jaw go slack. I let my hands fall open at my sides. I slowed my breathing until it was shallow and rhythmic. Cameron walked in first. He was followed by Natasha and Dr. Hill. The room smelled of expensive cologne and fear. "Is he out?" Cameron asked. He sounded eager. "He should be," Natasha said. I gave him a double dose, enough to knock out an elephant. Dr. Hill walked to the side of the bed. He opened his medical bag. He took out a penlight. He leaned over me. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. He used his thumb to pull my eyelid up. He shone the bright light directly into my pupil. This was the hardest part. Every instinct in my body screamed to look away, to blink, to flinch. But I forced my eye to stay still. I stared past the light. I stared into the darkness of my own mind. I became a stone. I became a piece of wood. "No reaction," Dr. Hill said. He checked my pulse. It was slow because I was calm. It was the calm of a sniper waiting for the shot. "His heart rate is depressed," Dr. Hill announced. "Respiration is shallow. He is in a deep coma. It appears to be a rapid neurological decline exacerbated by the medication." "Is it enough?" Cameron asked. "Is it enough for the judge?" "It is perfect," Dr. Hill said. "I can certify that he is non-responsive. He is incapable of making decisions. He is incapable of caring for himself. This is grounds for immediate emergency guardianship." Natasha let out a breath she had been holding. "Thank God," she said. "I was worried he would fight it." "He cannot fight anything now," Dr. Hill said. "He is a vegetable." I lay there and listened to them call me a vegetable. I listened to them discuss my life as if it were already over. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest, but I kept it locked down. I kept my face blank. "Search him," Cameron said. "We need the keys." I felt hands on my body. They were rough hands. Cameron. He patted down my pockets. He rolled me over like a sack of flour. He shoved his hand into the front pocket of my pajamas. He found nothing. He checked under the pillow. Nothing. Where are they?" he growled. "He keeps the safe keys on him, always." "Check his pants," Natasha said. "The ones he was wearing earlier." Cameron walked to the chair where I had draped my work trousers. I heard the jingle of metal. "Got them," he said. He walked back to the bed. He dangled the keys in front of my face. He laughed. "Look at this, Pops," he said. "The keys to the kingdom, and you cannot do a thing about it." He leaned down close to my ear. I could feel the heat of his skin. "I am going to sell it all, Caleb," he whispered. "The house, the tools, the land. I am going to sell it all, and I am going to spend every dime, and you are going to rot in a room with padded walls." I felt his spit on my cheek. The urge to reach up and crush his throat was overwhelming. My muscles twitched. Just a tiny spasm in my right arm. "Did he move?" Natasha asked sharply. "No," Cameron said. "He is gone, Natasha. The lights are on, but nobody is home." He stood up. He pocketed the keys. The keys to my safe. The safe where the deed to the house was kept. He thought he had won. He did not know the safe was empty. I had moved the deed and the patent documents to the bank box 3 days ago. All he would find in that safe was a stack of old warranties and a few silver dollars. But let him think he won. Let him get arrogant. "Call the transport," Dr. Hill said. "We need to move him to my facility tonight. We cannot risk him waking up here. We need him under controlled supervision." Controlled supervision. That meant a cell. That meant drugs. That meant isolation. I heard Natasha make a call. I heard her give the address. They were not calling an ambulance, they were calling a private transport service, a service that did not ask questions, a service that moved bodies for a price. I lay there for another 20 minutes. My body ached from staying still. My throat was dry. I listened to them packing my things. They did not pack clothes. They packed my financial records. They packed my checkbook. They were stripping my life down to the bone. The transport arrived. 2 men walked in. They smelled of tobacco and sweat. They did not speak. They unfolded a gurney next to the bed. 1, 2, 3 lift. One of them grunted. They grabbed me by the shoulders and the ankles. They hoisted me onto the canvas stretcher. They strapped me down. The buckles clicked tight across my chest and my legs. I was a prisoner. They wheeled me out of the bedroom. I stared at the ceiling. I saw the crack in the plaster I had meant to fix last winter. I saw the crown molding I had installed with my own hands. I was leaving my home, the home I had paid for with sweat and blood. They wheeled me down the hall. I passed the pictures on the wall, pictures of Kenya graduating, pictures of Natasha and me on our anniversary, pictures of a family that did not exist anymore. We went through the front door into the night air. It was cold. The wind bit at my face. Cameron and Natasha stood on the porch. They watched me go. They did not look sad. They looked relieved. They looked like they were taking out the trash. "Call me when he is settled," Natasha said to Dr. Hill. "I will," Dr. Hill said. "Do not worry. He will be well taken care of." They lifted the gurney into the back of a black van. It had no windows. It looked like a hearse. The door slammed shut. I was in darkness. The engine started. The van began to move. I squeezed my eyes shut. I pictured my house one last time. I pictured the porch where I drank my coffee. I pictured the garage where I built my engines. They thought this was the end. They thought they were sending me away to die. They were wrong. I felt the vibration of the road beneath me. I focused on the rhythm of the tires. I focused on the anger burning in my gut. It was a clean fuel. It burned hot and bright. "I am coming back," I whispered into the darkness. "I will return, and when I do, I will bring the storm with me." I woke up in a white room. The walls were soft. The floor was soft. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. I was wearing a paper gown that scratched my skin. My clothes were gone. My boots were gone. The checkbook and the keys were gone. I was just a body in a box. I tried the door. It was heavy steel with a small reinforced window. Locked. I was in Dr. Hill's private facility. It was a prison for people whose families wanted them to disappear. The door opened with a heavy clank. Dr. Hill walked in. He was flanked by 2 large orderlies who looked more like bouncers than nurses. Hill held a syringe. The needle was long. The liquid inside was yellow. "Good morning, Caleb," he said. His voice was smooth and professional. "You had a rough night. You were very agitated during transport. We need to calm you down." "I am calm," I said. My voice was raspy. "I am not crazy, Hill. You know it." "Paranoia," Dr. Hill said to the orderlies. "Classic symptom. He believes everyone is against him. Hold him." The 2 men grabbed my arms. Their grip was iron. They pinned me to the soft wall. I did not fight. If I fought, they would say I was violent. I let my muscles go loose. I let them hold me. Dr. Hill wiped my arm with an alcohol swab. It was cold. "And this will help you rest," he said. "It is a cocktail of haloperidol and lorazepam. It will clear the voices." "There are no voices," I said, "only yours." He jammed the needle into my deltoid. I felt the burn of the liquid entering my muscle. It was a fire spreading through my veins. "Give it 5 minutes," he told the men. "He will be out like a light." They let me go. They walked out. The heavy door slammed shut. The lock clicked. I had 5 minutes, maybe less. I knew about these drugs. Natasha used to talk about them. They shut down the brain. They turn you into a zombie. If that chemical hit my bloodstream fully, I would be unable to speak or think for days. I would miss my chance. I ran to the corner of the room. There was no toilet, just a drain in the floor. I shoved my fingers down my throat. I pushed past the gag reflex. I thought about Cameron laughing. I thought about Natasha poisoning my milk. I used the anger to trigger the spasm. My stomach contracted. I heaved. I retched violently. I emptied my stomach onto the drain. I forced myself to keep going until there was nothing left but bile. It was not a perfect solution. Some of the drug had already entered my blood. I felt the edges of my vision blur. I felt my knees get heavy. But I fought it. I paced the room. I slapped my own face. I did math problems in my head. 12 times 12 equals 144. The square root of 81 is 9. I kept my mind moving. I would not let the fog settle. I would not let them win. 10 miles away in the county courthouse, Natasha was putting on the performance of her life. She stood before Judge Vance wearing a modest black dress. She had no jewelry. She looked small and frail. She clutched a handkerchief to her chest. "Your Honor," she sobbed, "it breaks my heart to be here. I love my husband. We have been married 40 years, but he is not the man I married anymore." Judge Vance looked over his glasses. He was a busy man. He saw hundreds of these cases. He saw a weeping wife and a concerned family. "Tell me about the incident, Mrs. Thornton," he said. "He tried to burn the house down," Natasha whispered. She wiped a tear. "He turned on the gas. He locked the door. If I had not smelled it, we would all be dead. He thinks the house is cold. He keeps saying he wants to warm it up." Cameron stepped forward. He was wearing a suit. He looked respectful. He held up a tablet. "We have video, Your Honor," he said. "We installed cameras for his safety because he wanders. This is from yesterday morning." He played the video. It was grainy footage of me walking through the hallway. It showed me standing by the stove. It was edited. It was cut to make it look like I was turning dials randomly. It did not show the part where I fixed the loose hinge on the cabinet. It just showed a confused old man fiddling with gas knobs. The judge frowned. He watched the video. He saw what they wanted him to see. Danger. "This is disturbing," Judge Vance said. "We just want to protect him," Cameron said. His voice was full of fake concern. "We found a facility that can care for him. Dr. Hill is an expert, but we need the authority to handle his affairs. We need to pay for his treatment. The insurance does not cover everything. We need to sell the house to fund his care." The judge nodded. It seemed logical. It seemed necessary. "I am inclined to grant the emergency guardianship," Judge Vance said. He picked up his gavel. "The evidence is clear. Mr. Thornton is a danger to himself and others. I will sign the order granting Natasha Thornton full control over his assets and medical decisions." Natasha let out a breath. She smiled through her tears. She looked at Cameron. They had done it. They had won. The gavel started to come down. Objection. The word rang out from the back of the courtroom. It was sharp and cold like a whip crack. The gavel hovered in the air. Everyone turned. Ophelia Price walked down the center aisle. She was not walking fast. She was gliding. Her heels clicked on the wood floor with a rhythm that commanded attention. She carried a thin leather briefcase. She did not look at Natasha. She looked at the judge. "Who are you?" Judge Vance asked. "I am Ophelia Price," she said. "I represent Caleb Thornton." Natasha stood up. "He is incompetent," she shouted. "He cannot hire a lawyer. He does not know what day it is." "He hired me 3 days ago," Ophelia said calmly, "when he was fully competent. And I have a durable power of attorney that supersedes this hearing." Cameron stepped in front of Natasha. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Look at the video. The man is senile. We are trying to save him." Judge Vance looked at Ophelia. "Do you have evidence to refute the medical report from Dr. Hill?" he asked. Ophelia placed her briefcase on the table. She opened it. She did not take out a video. She did not take out a medical report. "I do not need to refute the report, Your Honor," she said. "My client is currently being held against his will in a private facility without due process. We will address that in criminal court. But for today, for this hearing regarding the guardianship of the estate, we have a different proposition." She turned to Natasha and Cameron. She smiled. It was a smile that should have terrified them. "My client is willing to concede the guardianship of the marital home," she said. Natasha blinked. "What?" "You heard me," Ophelia said. "Mr. Thornton agrees that the house is a burden. He agrees that Natasha should have full control over the property located at 124 Maple Street. He is willing to sign over his half of the deed immediately. He wants you to have it." Cameron's eyes went wide. He looked at Natasha. They could not believe it. They thought they would have to fight for months. They thought I would cling to that house until I died. "He agrees?" Natasha asked. "Yes," Ophelia said. "He wants you to be secure. He wants you to have the asset." She pulled a document from her briefcase. It was a single page. "This is a stipulated order," she said. "It grants Natasha Thornton full guardianship of the real estate property. It allows her to sell, transfer, or mortgage the home immediately. No waiting period." Cameron grabbed the paper. His hands were shaking. This was it. This was the lifeline. He could take this to the loan shark. He could show them the asset. He could save his life. "There is just one standard clause," Ophelia said casually. Since Mr. Thornton is surrendering his interest in the property, the guardian must assume full liability for the asset. It just means you take the house as is. Cameron didn't hear caution. He heard opportunity. He heard take the house, and in his mind the number flashed like a jackpot $800,000. Where do we sign? He demanded, already reaching. You should read it first, Judge Vance warned evenly. At the very least, have counsel review the terms. We don't need counsel. Natasha cut in quickly. Greed sharpened her voice. She could see the finish line. We know that house. We've lived there for 40 years. We accept the terms. She snatched the pen before the ink had settled in the air. Her signature swept across the page in a bold, triumphant flourish. Cameron leaned in and signed as witness his hand trembling with anticipation rather than doubt. Ophelia accepted the document back without a word. She examined each signature carefully, as if verifying a transaction already paid in full. Thank you, she said at last. Her tone was ice. Judge Vance hesitated, confusion flickering across his face, but procedure prevailed. He stamped the order. So, ordered, he declared, guardianship of the real estate is transferred. Natasha threw her arms around Cameron. We did it, she whispered, breathless with victory. We got the house. Ophelia snapped her briefcase closed with deliberate precision. She studied them, two people celebrating what they believed was conquest. Congratulations, she said quietly. You now own the house and everything attached to it. Then she turned and walked out of the courtroom without once looking back. Back in the cell, I was on the floor doing push-ups. My arms trembled. The sedative still wrestled with my bloodstream. My head felt weighted as though gravity had increased. But I kept counting. 41. 42. A sound cut through the rhythm, not the heavy metal clank of the facility doors, but something sharper. A siren, faint at first, then closer. I froze listening. Not an ambulance. Police. Ophelia had left the courthouse and made her call. She had contacted the state police. She had reported a kidnapping. She had delivered the footage from my button camera, the recording of Natasha stirring crushed pills into my milk, the clip of Cameron rifling through my pockets and stealing the keys. The cavalry was coming. Natasha and Cameron, however, were unaware. They were driving home flushed with triumph. They were heading toward their prize, a house I had leveraged to the edge 3 days earlier to fund the lawsuit against the auto manufacturer, a house carrying a $500,000 lien. A house Ophelia had just legally fastened to their names, debt and all. They thought they had signed a deed. They had signed a confession of liability. I rose slowly and wiped the sweat from my face. The fog in my mind was lifting. Clarity sharpened every thought. I moved toward the door and waited. The game was finished. Checkmate. The steel door shuddered violently, a thunderous metallic boom reverberating through the padded room. I leaned back against the wall and remained still. Another crash. Then the door burst inward, not opened, but forced. 2 state troopers in tactical gear filled the doorway, weapons raised, scanning for resistance. Behind them stood Ophelia Price, a court order raised in her hand like a blade. Dr. Hill's voice echoed down the corridor. "You can't do this," he shouted. "This is private property. He's a danger to the public." Ophelia did not grant him a glance. Her eyes were on me. "Get him out," she instructed calmly. One of the troopers stepped forward. "Mr. Thornton," he said firmly, "you're coming with us." I walked out barefoot, wearing nothing but a paper gown. As I passed Dr. Hill, another officer held him pinned against the wall. His complexion had drained to ash. He met my eyes, briefly saw the fire there, and looked away. Outside sunlight struck me full in the face. It stung. The air smelled of fuel, asphalt, and freedom. Ophelia handed me a canvas bag. "Your clothes," she said, "and your boots." I changed in the back seat of her car, pulled on my shirt, buttoned it slowly, laced my boots tight. With each knot, strength returned. We drove away from the facility without sirens. "You're free, Caleb," Ophelia said. The judge reviewed the footage. He signed the release immediately. "There's a warrant for Hill kidnapping malpractice. Natasha and Cameron will follow." "No," I said. She glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "No, not yet," I repeated. "Don't arrest them. Don't tell them I'm out. Let them believe I'm still locked away. Let them think they've won." Her brow lifted slightly. "Why?" "Because next week marks 40 years of marriage," I said evenly. "Natasha adores spectacle. She'll throw a party. She'll parade herself as the suffering wife. She'll use it to cement her control in front of the neighborhood." I looked out the window as the city passed. "I want to attend." Ophelia's lips curved into a thin, dangerous smile. "What do you need?" "A week," I answered. "A hotel, a tailor, and the finest car money can rent. I checked into the Four Seasons under cash and silence. For 6 days, I rebuilt myself. Steak every evening to restore muscle. Sleep on silk sheets to recover strength. I stood before a mirror for hours, refining posture, recalibrating presence. The mechanic was finished. That version of me had served its time. Now there was something else. On Fifth Avenue, I stepped into a tailor's showroom. I chose Italian wool the color of midnight. The suit was cut precisely to my frame, fitted like armor, disguised as elegance. Shoes of impossibly soft leather followed. A gold watch, solid, weighty real, rested against my wrist. Not plastic, not pretend. I studied myself one final time in the mirror. I was ready. Before I reveal what I did next, before I show you how the Cameron became the hunted comment, the number 70 below, so I know you're still standing with me. Because what happened that night changed everything. And a gentle reminder, parts of the story ahead may include dramatized elements crafted for reflection and learning. If that's not your style, you're welcome to step away now. On Saturday evening, I sat in the back of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, surrounded by cream leather and silence. The windows were darkly tinted, sealing me inside a cocoon of calm. The driver, James, kept his eyes on the road. He was not a curious man. He did not ask questions. He simply drove. When we turned onto my street, the headlights swept across a long line of parked cars. Natasha had spared no effort. She had invited everyone, the neighbors she used to whisper about behind lace curtains, the church choir who had prayed for my recovery, and even the men Cameron owed money to. It was not just a party, it was a performance. The house was blazing with white lights strung through the old oak tree in the yard. Jazz drifted through the evening air, soft, smooth, nostalgic. It was the same music I had once played for her when we were young and foolish and in love. She had turned our memories into stage decor. "Pull up to the front," I told James. "Block the driveway." The Phantom moved forward without a sound, long and sleek, like a shark cutting through still water. Through the window, I watched the celebration unfold. Champagne glasses glittered under string lights. Tables covered the lawn. Laughter rose in polite waves. Natasha stood on the porch in a white dress that made her look like a bride all over again. She held a glass delicately between her fingers and laughed at something someone said. She looked radiant. She looked relieved. She believed her husband was 10 miles away, rotting in a padded room. Cameron lingered near the garage, holding court like a minor king. A cluster of men surrounded him as he gestured toward the roofline, the windows, the driveway. He was pitching it, selling the house, selling my life, selling my legacy, while I still breathed. James brought the car to a slow stop. The massive chrome grille gleamed beneath the streetlights. The spirit of ecstasy shimmered like a prophecy. The music faltered. The conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned toward the unfamiliar vehicle. It did not belong on this street. It looked imported from another world. "Who is that?" someone murmured. "Maybe it's a buyer," Cameron called out, excitement flashing across his face. He believed fortune had finally arrived to save him. James stepped out, smoothly walked around the hood, and opened the rear door. I inhaled slowly, adjusted my cuffs, stepped out. My shoe struck the pavement with deliberate finality. I rose to my full height, buttoned my jacket, and stepped forward into the light. Silence settled like dust. You could have heard a pin fall onto the grass. Natasha's wine glass slipped from her hand. It struck the porch steps and shattered. Red wine splashed across her white dress, blooming outward like a wound. Cameron's mouth fell open. He staggered backward, tripping over a ceramic garden gnome. He stumbled, hard arms flailing. I did not glance down. I did not shrink. I walked with the slow, assured stride of a man reclaiming stolen territory. The neighbors parted instinctively, creating a path. Their eyes moved from my suit to my face. They did not see a mechanic. They did not see a confused old man. They saw someone else entirely. I climbed the porch steps and stopped in front of Natasha. She trembled. Her complexion had drained of color. Her eyes were wide, almost childlike, filled with disbelief. She looked as though she were staring at a ghost. "Hello, my love," I said, my voice steady and resonant. It carried across the yard without strain. "Happy anniversary." Cameron recovered quickly. His face turned a violent shade of red that clashed with his tailored suit. Shock gave way to fury. The story he had written, the one where I rotted quietly out of sight, was unraveling in real time. He charged up the steps like a rabid animal. "What the hell are you doing here, Pops?" he shouted. "Did you break out? You're sick. You belong in a cage." He lunged for my lapels, intent on dragging me down, humiliating me before his audience. He never touched me. James moved faster than thought. 1 second he stood by the car, the next he was between us. He did not punch Cameron. He did not kick him. He simply extended one powerful arm and swatted him aside. Effortless. Cameron flew backward off the porch and landed hard on the lawn. He rolled, coughing, his expensive suit smeared with dirt. The illusion of control shattered along with his dignity. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several guests stepped back instinctively, noticing the unmistakable outline of a firearm beneath James's jacket. This was no polite interruption. This was a hostile takeover. I did not spare Cameron another glance. He was no longer relevant. Instead, I surveyed the faces before me, the neighbors who had whispered about my decline, the pastor who had prayed publicly for my peace. And at the back, half hidden in shadow, the loan sharks in cheap suits watching Cameron with sudden focused interest. I walked calmly to the DJ booth. The young man behind the turntables looked petrified and stepped aside without protest. I lifted the microphone. It felt familiar in my hand, solid-weighted, useful. A tool. I understood tools. I tapped it lightly. Thump, thump. The sound echoed across the yard. "Good evening," I began, my voice low and controlled. "Thank you all for coming to my house. Thank you for celebrating with my wife." I turned slightly toward Natasha. She stood frozen, clutching her chest eyes, scanning for an exit that did not exist. "You believe you're here to celebrate 40 years of marriage," I continued. "You believe this is an anniversary." I let the silence stretch until it pressed against every ribcage present. "But you are mistaken." The tension tightened, palpable, electric. "You are here to witness a rebirth," I said clearly. "Tonight is the night Caleb Thornton woke up." Cameron struggled upright on the lawn, shouting hoarsely. "Don't listen to him. He's insane. The drugs fried his brain. Somebody call the police. Call Dr. Hill." I turned my gaze toward him, and I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had already won. "We do not need Dr. Hill," I said. "We have something better. We have the truth." I nodded to James. He pulled a small remote control from his pocket. He pointed it at the large projection screen set up near the oak tree. It was supposed to show a slideshow of our happy marriage. It was supposed to show pictures of vacations and birthdays. It flickered to life, but there were no pictures of beaches. There were no pictures of cakes. The video was grainy. It was black and white. It was shot from a low angle from under a table. The audio boomed through the high-quality speakers. It was crisp. It was clear. "Forget dinner," Cameron screamed on the screen. "We are out of time. I got a call an hour ago. They said if I do not have the first installment by Wednesday, they are going to start mailing pieces of me to you." The crowd murmured. They looked at the real Cameron standing on the grass. He went pale. He stopped shouting. The video cut to Natasha. "Murder," she said on the screen. "You are talking about murder." "I am talking about survival," the video, Cameron snapped. "It is him or me, Natasha. Choose." "Okay," the video, Natasha said. Her voice was flat. "Okay." The crowd gasped. A woman covered her mouth. The pastor made the sign of the cross. The video cut again. It showed Natasha in the bedroom. It showed her holding the mug. It showed her standing over me while I pretended to sleep. It showed her wiping the spilled poison from the quilt. "Make sure he does not wake up," the video, Cameron said. The screen went black. The silence in the yard was heavy. It was suffocating. Everyone looked at Natasha, the loving wife, the grieving caretaker. She was exposed. She was naked in her treachery. Then the video changed. It showed Kenya, my daughter. She was sitting at the kitchen table. She was counting money, my money. "He is such a burden," she said on the screen. "I hate visiting him. He smells like oil. I just want the money so I can leave this dump. I hope he dies soon so we can stop pretending." Kenya was standing near the buffet table. She dropped her plate. It shattered. She looked at her friends. They were looking at her with disgust. She looked at me. She started to cry, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of shame. I looked at the back of the crowd. The men in the cheap suits were moving. They were moving toward Cameron. They had heard the part about the debt. They knew the money was gone. They knew their investment was at risk. Cameron saw them too. He started to back away. He looked like a trapped animal. I raised the microphone again. "You see, I said, my family loves me very much. They love me so much they wanted to send me to a special place where I would never wake up." Natasha found her voice. It was a shrill scream. "That is fake," she yelled. "It is AI. He made it up. He is trying to frame us." I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it slowly. "Is this fake Natasha?" I asked. I held it up. It was a bank statement. It was printed on thick bond paper. It had the logo of the First National Bank. "This is the balance of the Blind Mechanic Trust," I said. I read the number aloud. $5,300,000. The number hung in the air. 5 million. Natasha stopped screaming. Her eyes locked onto the paper. Her pupils dilated. She did the math instantly. 5 million. That was the life she wanted. That was the cruises. That was the jewelry. That was the freedom. She forgot the video. She forgot the poison. She forgot the crowd. Greed took over. It was a reflex. "Oh, Caleb," she said. Her voice changed. It became sweet. It became the voice she used when she wanted something. "You won. You won the lawsuit. I knew you would. I always told you that you were a genius." She took a step toward the porch. She held out her hands. "Honey," she said, "we are rich. We can finally be happy. Forget all this silliness. We are a team." Cameron stopped backing away. He looked at the paper. He licked his lips. 5 million. That would pay his debts. That would save his life. "Pops," he said. He tried to smile. It looked like a rictus of pain. "Pops, you did it. I always believed in you. I was just trying to protect you." I looked at them. They were pathetic. They would sell their souls for a piece of paper. I laughed. It was a dry, hard sound. "This money is real," I said. I folded the paper. I put it back in my pocket. "But it is not yours. It belongs to the trust, and I am the only beneficiary." Natasha stopped. Her smile faltered. "But we are married," she said. "What is yours is mine." "Not anymore," I said. I pulled out another document. This one was a court order. "I filed for divorce 3 days ago," I said. "On the grounds of attempted murder and fraud. The judge granted an emergency freeze on all marital assets pending the investigation." "You get nothing, Natasha, not a dime." Her face crumpled. She looked old. She looked broken. "But you have something else," I said. I picked up a third document from the DJ table. It was thick. It had a blue cover. "Congratulations, Cameron," I said. "Congratulations, Natasha. You won. You got what you wanted." I threw the document at them. It fluttered through the air. It landed on the grass at Cameron's feet. "You wanted guardianship of the house," I said. "You fought for it in court yesterday. You signed the papers without reading them. You wanted the asset." Cameron picked up the document. He looked at it. He looked confused. "Well, you got it," I said. "You are the legal guardians of the property at 124 Maple Street. You own it. You control it." Natasha looked confused. "Why are you smiling?" she asked. "We have the house. We can sell it. It is worth $800,000. I leaned into the microphone. "I took out a mortgage on the house 10 years ago, Natasha," I said. "To pay for the lawyers, to pay for the patent fight. I leveraged every brick. I leveraged every blade of grass." I paused. "The house has a lien on it," I said, "for $500,000. The balloon payment was due yesterday. I did not pay it." Cameron dropped the paper. His hands were shaking. "And since you are the legal guardians," I said, "since you signed that order accepting full liability for the estate, you owe the bank $500,000 today." I smiled. "If you do not pay it, they will foreclose next week, and you will still owe the balance." The crowd erupted. They laughed. They cheered. They saw the trap snap shut. Natasha fell to her knees. She screamed. It was a sound of pure agony. Not for me, for the money. She had lost the 5 million. She had lost the house. She had inherited a debt that would bury her. Cameron looked at the loan sharks. They were walking toward him. They did not look happy. They knew he had no house to sell. They knew he had no money coming. He looked at me. His eyes were begging. "Pops," he whispered, "please." I turned off the microphone. I dropped it on the table. "Do not call me Pops," I said. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the Rolls-Royce. James opened the door. I did not look back at the ruin of my family. I did not look back at the house I had built. It was just wood and brick. It belonged to them now, and they were welcome to it. The sirens cut through the night air like a knife. They were loud and close. The guests covered their ears. The blue and red lights washed over the front yard, turning the white tablecloths into strobe lights. It was not one car. It was a fleet. Ophelia had timed this perfectly. She had given the police the evidence of the kidnapping and the poisoning an hour ago. She had waited for me to finish my performance. She had waited for me to destroy them in front of their friends. Now it was time for the law to finish the job. She told them exactly where to find the perpetrators. They swarmed the driveway. Officers in tactical vests poured out of the vehicles. They moved with precision. They ignored the loan shark standing in the shadows. They ignored the shocked neighbors. They went straight for the woman in the white dress and the man trying to hide behind the oak tree. Dr. Hill had been lurking near the side gate, hoping to slip away during the confusion. 2 officers tackled him before he could take 3 steps. I saw his face pressed into the dirt of my flower bed, the dirt I had tilled every spring. He was shouting about his medical license. He was shouting that he was a victim of circumstance. An officer pulled his arms back and clicked the handcuffs into place. The sound was crisp. It cut through the wailing of the sirens. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and medical malpractice," the officer recited. Dr. Hill spat dirt. He looked at me. I did not look away. I watched him being dragged toward a squad car. He was no longer a doctor. He was just a criminal in a dirty suit. Natasha stood on the porch. She was frozen. An officer walked up the steps. He was young, but his face was hard. He held up a warrant. "Natasha Thornton," he said, "you are under arrest for attempted murder and unlawful imprisonment." Natasha looked at the handcuffs. She looked at the guests. She saw the judgment in their eyes. She saw her reputation crumbling into dust. She panicked. The mask of the grieving wife fell away completely. The mask of the dignified matriarch shattered. She pointed a trembling finger at Cameron, who was cowering near the garage. "It was him!" she screamed. Her voice was shrill and ugly. "It was all his idea. He forced me to do it. He said he would kill me if I did not help him. He owes money to bad people. I am a victim here. The crowd gasped. The betrayal was absolute. The alliance of greed had dissolved the moment the steel bracelets came out. Natasha was throwing her partner to the wolves to save her own skin. Cameron looked at her with wide eyes. "You lying witch," he shouted. "You mixed the poison. You stole the keys. You wanted the house just as much as I did." The officer did not care about their arguments. He spun Natasha around. He cuffed her hands behind her back. She struggled. She kicked. She screamed that she was an old woman. She screamed that she was frail. But the video on the screen behind her was still frozen on the image of her pouring powder into my milk. The evidence was staring down at her. She was dragged down the steps she had once swept with pride. She was shoved into the back of a police cruiser. She looked at me through the window. She mouthed the word, "Please." I turned my back on her. I had spent 40 years pleasing her. I was done. Cameron saw Natasha go down. He saw the police focused on securing the doctor and his mother-in-law. He saw an opening. He thought he could run. He sprinted toward the back gate that led to the alley. It was a desperate move. He was fast, but he was panicked. He scrambled over the rose bushes, tearing his expensive suit. He made it to the gate. He fumbled with the latch. He pushed it open. He did not get far. The alley was not empty. The men in the ill-fitting suits were waiting. They had anticipated his move. They knew rats always run for the darkest hole. I watched from the porch. The police saw him run. They started to move toward him, but the captain held up a hand. He paused. He adjusted his belt. He looked at his watch. He gave the universe 10 seconds of blind justice. Cameron ran straight into the chest of the largest loan shark. The man did not move. He grabbed Cameron by the lapels. He lifted him off the ground. Cameron kicked and flailed. He screamed for the police. "Help me!" he shrieked. "Arrest me! Please arrest me!" The shark did not speak. He threw Cameron against the brick wall of the garage. The sound of the impact was sickening. It was a wet thud. Cameron slid down the wall. He tried to crawl away. The man stepped forward. He lifted his heavy boot. He did not aim for the head. He aimed for the leg. He stomped down hard on Cameron's shin. The snap was loud. It sounded like a dry branch breaking in a winter forest. Cameron howled. It was a high-pitched sound of pure agony. He curled into a ball, clutching his leg. He rolled in the dirt. He was crying. He was begging. The loan shark leaned down. He whispered something in Cameron's ear. I did not hear it, but I knew what it was. It was a promise. It was a reminder that a broken leg was just a down payment. The debt was still owed. And now Cameron had no house to sell, no inheritance to claim. The police captain lowered his hand. "Okay," he said. "Go get him." The officers jogged over to the alley. The loan sharks stepped back. They raised their hands. They looked innocent. "We were just performing a citizen's arrest, officer," one of them said. He tried to flee. He fell. The police did not argue. They picked Cameron up. He screamed in pain as they moved his broken leg. They did not handle him gently. They dragged him to the waiting ambulance. He was sobbing. He was broken in body and spirit. He looked at me as they loaded him onto the stretcher. His eyes were glazed with pain. He looked like a child who had touched a hot stove after being told not to. I felt nothing, no joy, no sorrow, just the cold satisfaction of a balanced equation. He had tried to break my mind. Now his leg was broken. It was fair. The yard was clearing out. The guests were fleeing the scene of the disaster. They did not want to be associated with a criminal family. They drove away in their luxury cars, leaving tire marks on the lawn. The police cars drove off with lights flashing, carrying my past away. I stood alone on the porch. The party decorations were still up. The cake was uncut. The music had stopped. I felt a tug on my sleeve. I looked down. Kenya was kneeling on the grass at my feet. Her dress was ruined. Her makeup was streaked with tears. She looked small. She looked like the little girl who used to wait for me to come home from the shop. But her eyes were not innocent. They were terrified. Daddy, she sobbed. Oh, Daddy, I am so sorry. I did not know. I swear I did not know they were going to hurt you. I looked at her. I looked at the daughter I had starved for. I looked at the woman who had laughed at me while I wore a bib. You knew Kenya, I said. My voice was tired. You knew everything. I saw the video. I heard you say you hoped I would die soon. She grabbed my hand. She tried to kiss it. I pulled it away. I was confused, she cried. Cameron told me it was for the best. He said you were suffering. He manipulated me, Daddy. I am a victim too. He ruined our credit. He spent all our money. I have nothing. They are going to take my car. They are going to take my clothes. I have nowhere to go. She looked up at me. Her eyes were pleading. Help me, Daddy, she begged. Please. You have the money now. You have millions. You can fix this. You can pay off Cameron's debts. You can buy us a new house. We can start over. Just you and me. I will take care of you. I promise. I looked at the house behind me. It was dark now. The lights had been turned off. It was just a shell. You want me to save you? I asked. Yes, she nodded eagerly. Yes, Daddy, save me. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a $20 bill. It was crumpled. It was greasy. It was the only cash I had carried before I got the check. I dropped the bill on the grass in front of her. Here, I said. She looked at the money. She looked at me. She looked confused. What is this? She asked. It is cab fare, I said. Or maybe it is lunch. It is all you are getting from me. Daddy, you cannot be serious, she wailed. I am your daughter. No, I said. My daughter was a kind girl who loved her father. My daughter would never have let her husband mock me. My daughter died a long time ago. Kenya, you are just a stranger who shares her face. I stepped around her. I walked down the steps. But where will I go? She screamed. What will I do? I stopped. I turned back one last time. You will do what I did, I said. You will get a job. You will work. You will struggle. And maybe if you are lucky, you will learn what it feels like to earn your own way. I have rescued you 1,000 times, Kenya. I paid for your mistakes. I paid for your vanity. I shielded you from the world. And in return, you tried to bury me. I took a deep breath. The night air filled my lungs. And this time you have to save yourself, I said, by learning how to be a human being. I turned away. I walked toward the Rolls-Royce. James held the door open. I slid into the leather seat. I did not look back at the woman kneeling in the dirt. I did not look back at the flashing lights in the distance. Drive, James, I said. Where to, sir, he asked. Forward, I said. Just drive forward. The car pulled away. I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. It grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck of light in the darkness. Then we turned a corner, and it was gone. I sat in the silence of the car. I touched the gold watch on my wrist. It ticked steadily. Time was moving. My life was starting over. I was 70 years old. I was alone, but I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I was at peace. It has been 30 days since the red and blue lights faded from my street. 30 days since the silence returned. But it is a different kind of silence now. It is the silence of a ledger being balanced. I drove past the county jail yesterday. It is a gray concrete building surrounded by razor wire. Natasha is inside. She's wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashes with her complexion. She sleeps on a steel cot with a thin mattress. There are no silk sheets. There is no wine. There is only the cold, hard reality of a cell. Her lawyer says she cries every day. She claims she was coerced. She claims she is a victim. But the judge watched the video. The judge saw her pour the powder. She was denied bail. She sits there, and she waits for a trial that will send her away for 20 years. She wanted to live in a place where someone else made her meals and did her laundry. She got her wish. Cameron is not in jail yet. He is in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. He paid cash for a week. He cannot walk. His leg is in a cast that goes up to his hip. He sits in a dark room with the curtains drawn. He jumps every time a car door slams outside. He knows the men in the ill-fitting suits are still out there. They know where he is. They are just letting him heal a little. They want him to be able to work so he can pay them back. He will spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. He will never wear a suit again. He will never drive a Porsche. He is a ghost haunting his own life. And Kenya, my daughter. I went to a diner downtown last Tuesday. It was late. I sat in the back. I saw a waitress moving between the tables. She looked tired, her feet dragged. She was wearing a uniform that was too big for her. She spilled coffee on a customer. The man yelled at her. He called her clumsy. She did not argue. She did not roll her eyes. She apologized. She wiped the table. She looked like she was about to cry. It was Kenya. She works the graveyard shift. She lives in a studio apartment above a laundromat. She takes the bus. She is learning what it means to stand on her own feet. I watched her for an hour. I did not say hello. I did not leave a tip. I paid my bill and I walked away. She needs this. She needs to feel the weight of the tray. She needs to know that money is heavy. It is the only way she will ever become a person worth knowing. The house on Maple Street is gone. Not physically. The structure is still there, but it is dead. The bank foreclosed on it 3 days after the party. The lien I placed on it swallowed every cent of equity. Natasha and Cameron defaulted immediately. The bank sent a crew to board up the windows. They put a padlock on the door. They put a sign on the lawn. Foreclosure auction. The neighbors walk by and shake their heads. They talk about the tragedy. They do not know it was a liberation. I do not miss it. I do not miss the crown molding or the oak floors. It was a museum of lies. I let the bank take it. It was the price of my freedom. I erased the chalkboard. I washed it clean. I did not buy a mansion. I did not buy a yacht. I did not move to an island. I stayed right here in the city that made me. I took a drive down to the industrial district. It is a place of brick factories and smokestacks. It is a place most people avoid. I found a building. It was an old textile mill. It had been abandoned for 10 years. The windows were broken. The roof leaked. The floor was covered in debris. But the bones were good. The steel beams were straight. It had soul. I bought it. I paid cash. I hired a crew. But I did not hire Cameron's friends. I hired men from the neighborhood, men who needed a second chance. We worked side by side. I put on my coveralls. I picked up a hammer. I sweated. I bled. We replaced the roof. We poured new concrete. We installed lights that turned the night into day. I filled the space with machines. I bought lathes. I bought milling machines. I bought the most advanced diagnostic computers money could buy. I bought engines, V8s, diesels, electric motors. I lined them up like soldiers on parade. I put a sign over the door. It is simple metal letters welded to an iron arch. The Thornton Institute of Mechanics. It is not a business. It is a school. I went to the high schools in the poorest districts. I talked to the counselors. I asked for the kids who were failing, the kids who sat in the back of the class drawing in notebooks, the kids who had grease under their fingernails and anger in their eyes. I asked for the ones the system had thrown away, the ones they called obsolete. I found them. There are 50 of them now, boys and girls, black and white and brown. They come here after school. They come here on weekends. I teach them. I do not teach them how to pass a test. I teach them how to feel the vibration of an engine. I teach them how to listen to the rhythm of a piston. I teach them that a machine does not lie. If you treat it right, it runs. If you neglect it, it breaks. There is no politics in an engine block. There is only truth. I watch them. I see a boy named Marcus holding a torque wrench for the first time. He treats it like a holy relic. I see a girl named Sarah welding a seam with a steady hand. I see the pride in their eyes when an engine roars to life for the first time. It is a sound better than any symphony. I pay them. I give them a stipend so they do not have to sell drugs on the corner. I give them a meal so they do not have to go home hungry. I give them a future. They look at me with respect. Not because I have $5 million. They do not know about the money. They respect me because I can take a transmission apart and put it back together, blindfolded. They respect me because I have dirt on my hands. They respect me because I am one of them. I am building an army of mechanics. an army of creators. They will go out into the world and they will fix things. They will build things. They will know that their worth is not in what they own, but in what they can do. I sat in my office. It is a glass box suspended above the workshop floor. I can see everything from here. I can see the sparks flying from the welding stations. I can hear the whine of the drills. I can smell the oil and the hot metal. It is the perfume of industry. I sipped my black coffee. It was strong and bitter, just the way I like it. There was a knock on the door. I turned. Ophelia Price stood there. She was wearing a red suit today. She looked like victory. She was holding a manila envelope. "Hello, Caleb," she said. She walked in and sat down. She looked out at the workshop. She watched the kids working below. "This is impressive," she said. "You did good." "I am just getting started," I said. She placed the envelope on my desk. She slid it toward me. "It is done," she said. "The divorce is final. The judge granted everything. Natasha contested it from jail, but she had no ground to stand on. The fraud invalidated the prenup. The attempted murder invalidated her claim to marital assets. You are a single man, Caleb." I looked at the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper that severed 40 years of my life. It cut the cord to the woman who tried to kill me. It cut the cord to the lies. "Thank you, Ophelia," I said. "I mean it. You saved my life." "You saved your own life, Caleb," she said. I just filed the paperwork. She stood up. She walked to the door. She paused. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. "You have the money. You have the freedom. You could go anywhere." I looked down at the workshop. I saw Marcus high-fiving Sarah because they fixed a carburetor. I saw the future. "I am exactly where I want to be," I said. Ophelia smiled. She closed the door. I opened the envelope. I took out the decree. I picked up a pen. It was a heavy silver pen. I signed my name on the line, Caleb Thornton. The ink was black and permanent. I put the pen down. I leaned back in my chair. I thought about Natasha in her cell. I thought about Cameron in his motel. I thought about Kenya in the diner. I did not feel hate. I did not feel pity. I felt nothing. They were just broken parts that I had discarded. I had replaced them with something that worked. I looked at my hands. They were still rough. They were still stained with oil. They were the hands of a mechanic. I had $5 million in the bank. I had a legacy growing on the floor below me. I had my life back. I stood up. I walked out of the office. I walked down the metal stairs to the workshop floor. Marcus looked up. "Hey, Mr. Thornton," he shouted over the noise of a drill. "This engine is humming. Come listen." I walked over to him. I leaned in. I listened to the steady rhythmic beat of the pistons. It was a strong sound. It was a powerful sound. "It sounds perfect, Marcus," I said. "Good job." He beamed. I picked up a wrench. I tightened a bolt. I felt the metal bite. I was home. And to you, listening to this story, remember this? When family betrayal comes from your own blood, it cuts deeper than any stranger ever could. I thought loyalty was automatic. I thought sacrifice guaranteed love. I was wrong. God gave me hands to build, but I ignored the signs He placed in front of me. God whispered through my instincts, and I silenced them. And when everything collapsed, it was God who gave me the strength not to become bitter. This is my family story, a painful one. A family story about pride, blindness, and finally awakening. If you see the red flags, do not dismiss them like I did. Do not confuse silence with peace. Do not let family betrayal turn you into someone filled with rage. Protect your dignity before you protect your image. In my opinion, money does not change people, it reveals them. Respect is earned. And forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. This family story is not just about revenge. It is about rebuilding. It is about surviving family betrayal without losing your soul. If this family story resonates with you, tell me in the comments, what would you do if trust was shattered in your own home? Share this with someone who needs strength. And subscribe if you believe it is never too late to rise again. Thank you for staying until the very end. And a gentle note, upcoming stories may include dramatized elements crafted for reflection and education. If that is not for you, feel free to explore content that better suits you.